ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the City of Lebanon Planning Commission meeting, January 7th, 2023. First of all, we'll have call the meeting to order, and secondly, we'll have the roll call, please.
Dan Bayshore.
Here.
Corey Coons.
Here.
Keith Campbell.
Here.
Brian Tandy.
Here.
Heather Schaller.
Here.
Ali Mullen. Here. Lori Gross. Here.
Okay, the next item, we'll go to the election of officers. So, I would entertain a motion.
I move for Brian Tandy to be president.
So, actually, just to change that a little bit, actually, we need to seek nominations, so you need to nominate, and then we could have more than one nomination, then we would need a motion.
Perfect. I nominate Brian Tandy for president.
Is there anyone else that'd like to make a nomination?
Anyone
Other than
else
Brian
want to make a
Tandy.
nomination?
Anybody want the job?
You could laugh at that too. It's totally fine.
All right, so we have one nomination, so now we need a motion on that nomination.
I move to approve Brian Tandy as president.
We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Dan Bayshore. Yes. Kevin Krulik.
Yes.
Corey Coons.
Yes.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Brian Tandy.
Yes.
Heather Schaller.
Yes.
Ali Mullen.
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
Okay, and I will change seats with Brian, and he can start the meeting after that.
change seats.
You want to stay there?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll change seats at the next meeting.
It's the roll call. I'd say approve of minutes. You need that?
We need a vice chair.
We have more.
We'll take
There's
we'll switch here, I guess. We'll take a nomination for the vice president role.
Yeah.
I nominate Corey Coons for vice president.
That's what I get for nominating
second.
people.
Are there any other nominations for
others?
vice president other than Corey? Now we'll need a
I'll
motion.
entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion for Corey Coons to be vice chairman, president, whichever.
Okay, got a motion and a second. Kelly?
Dan Bayshore. Yes. Kevin Krulik.
Yes.
Corey Coons.
Yes.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Brian Tandy.
Yes.
Heather Schaller.
Yes.
Ali Mullen. Yes. Lori Gross.
Yes.
And I would take a nomination for secretary.
Just indicate typically Kelly is nominated
Kelly,
as secretary, so I assume we
I
follow
nominate
that.
Kelly.
Yep.
And I'll second that.
Any other nominations? Hearing none. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved?
Yes.
Roll call for myself.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Dan Bayshore. Yes. Kevin Krulik.
Yes.
Corey Coons.
Yes.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Brian Tandy.
Yes.
Heather Schaller.
Yes.
Ali Mullen. Yes. Lori Gross.
Yes.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes from last week? Last month, better yet? Okay, we'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion, we approve the minutes as written.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign? Okay, minutes are approved. I don't see any old business on here, Ben. We'll go to new business, docket 22-76. The City of Lebanon Business Park requesting development plan approval for the construction of a 4-lot speculative industrial development on 42.69 acres. Ben, want to tell us about that?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. We'll do a quick overview of this project here and then see if there's any questions from commission members. So Cedars of Lebanon, this actually came to you a few months ago for a primary plat application, so this is the second time around they're coming back in for the development plan. What they're doing is of the 5 lots that they've created in their primary lot plat, they're coming in for 4 lots for the development plan approval at the current time. If they want to pull up the screen for you, I'll give you a quick review of the site location. So this is the site that's highlighted here in yellow. This is actually the overall Cedars at Lebanon site. State Road 39 is just to the west here. Tire Road is just to the north. and then probably about a mile up the road is the State Road 39 interchange on Interstate 65. So this is south of 65, just to the east of State Road 39. And actually, the railroad represents the western boundary of this site. So on this overall site plan, what is before you tonight for development plan approval would be these 4 lots. You can kind of see highlighted in orange. There'd be 1, 2, 3, and then 4 here. And then this lot 5 would come in at a later date for development plan review once they have either a speculative plan identified or a tenant identified for a build-to-suit. So what we're talking about is just these 4 lots here. This western lot would be the detention, and then there would be three identical speculative industrial buildings that would be developed on the last 3 remaining lots. So let me go to my next page here. I have to change the zoom a little bit so you can see it. So this is the overall site plan for the site. I'm going to get a little bit smaller here. So these 4 same lots, and I'll just kind of go through generally the overview of the overall site. Again, as I mentioned, the detention facility that provides detention for this overall development is in this lot that's furthest west that you see here. And then again, as I mentioned, you've got 3 identical buildings that are located on the 3 remaining lots. You've got 3 access points along Tire Road. To the building front would actually face to the west here. So this is their employee parking that you see on the west side of this building. And then you've got 2 mirroring images of the truck courts on these buildings. So all the overhead doors and or docks would be to the interior here, and then all the truck trailer parking would be on these interior lots. And then on these buildings, then you can see the employee parking would be on the east sides of the building along this road frontage here. They have provided access around all the buildings that you see located here. They have provided all the appropriate access to all sides of the buildings, to both the truck and employee parking areas. So that's a real quick overview of the overall site, and then I'll get into a little bit further detail here in terms of what you all saw in the staff report. Walking through the development standards, this site is zoned general industrial, ID. General industrial requires a minimum lot size of 5 acres, and these lots range in size from 9 to 10 acres, so they all meet those size requirements for the general industrial zoning district. Additionally, on the minimum lot width, there's a 200-foot minimum lot width requirement, and they range in width from about 614 feet to about 750 feet, excuse me. So you can see that they do meet all the lot width requirements. In terms of front setbacks, in general industrial, the front setbacks are 100 feet. So where those are applicable would be on the northern and eastern perimeters. So you'll see that these buildings, you can see there's a fairly significant setback. And then again, you can see that same thing runs along the eastern boundary. Another thing I did want to point out is that these old county roads out here did not have any dedicated right-of-way according to our thoroughfare plan. So these setbacks are based off of a proposed right-of-way that would be dedicated as part of the platting process to make sure we have appropriate width to be able to improve those roads over time. So all those setbacks are based off of the proposed right-of-ways here as opposed to from the center line of the road. So we have made sure to accommodate right-of-way in addition to those front setbacks. Side and rear setbacks are all 50 feet, so where those are applicable then will be on those remaining interior property lines. And the setbacks in most cases range from 50 to 200 feet depending on the property, so they have more than meet any of the required side and rear setbacks on any of these properties. Maximum height of structures in the general industrial zoning district is 50 feet, and I'll show you the elevations here in a second. The elevations of these buildings are all 40 feet tall, so they do meet the maximum height requirement. In terms of parking, maybe I'll pull up another page here that shows a little bit of a zoom in on one of the sites. So again, as I mentioned, the employee parking is all to the west of this building, and then the truck and trailer parking is all to the east. As I mentioned, these are speculative buildings, which means there's no tenants identified for these buildings. So what we did is, looking at the parking calculations, we just estimated that this is a warehouse building, and looked at the parking requirements for a warehouse building, which are 1 space per employee in the largest shift plus 1 space per vehicle used in the operation. So that would be 1 space per employee in the largest shift would be the employee, and then vehicles used in the operation would be the truck parking. Again, as I mentioned, it's a speculative, so we don't know how many employees will be on the largest shift. But in talking with the applicant and with their civil engineer, they do have some parking ratios that they use when they're developing buildings like this, and they've estimated that this would be more than enough parking to accommodate any largest shift in any of these buildings. That's certainly something we'd have to review if there's a more intense tenant that comes in that, say, needs So on these, each building has 109 parking spaces. If a user comes in and we do the calculation, it says that they need 150 parking spaces. As you can see, there's space where they could add additional parking as needed. So we'll review all those when those tenants are identified to make sure that the 109 parking spaces is adequate. And if there's a user that needs additional parking, we'll make sure that that's addressed at the time that they would come in for the tenant finishes on that building. But at the current time, this is adequate parking based on, the expectations for what the users would be in these buildings. On the lighting plan, this is something that the applicant is still working on. They've identified a lighting contractor and working on getting that finalized. And what we've indicated to them is we can take this forward tonight with a conditional approval that the lighting plan would be provided to us before we would release or issue any building permits or for site improvements to the site. So we want to make sure they are aware of all the UDO requirements for lighting, and so they're completing that, and then we'll be reviewing that before we would issue any permits for site work. On landscaping, let me scroll down to the landscaping. So I will go to the pages where you can get a little bit closer, but I'll just give you a brief overview of what's being proposed. So in terms of landscaping, they are providing landscaping around the detention facility you see here. They're providing street corridor landscaping along both road frontages that you see represented here. In addition to that, all parking areas and buildings include both parking lot perimeter and interior landscaping, and also some building-based landscaping, and I'll go. So we have reviewed, just in terms of the overall site in summary, we have indicated that they have met all the landscaping requirements of the ordinance for these buildings, and then I'll give you a little bit more detail and scroll down here. This just gives you a close-up view of what they're proposing for the detention facility to provide the landscape plantings around that, to dress that up. The first building, as you can see here, a little bit better. There's significant tree and shrub plantings along that northern perimeter along the roadway, and then you can see the tree and shrub plantings that wrap around the perimeter of the parking area, and then the landscape islands that occur in various locations throughout the parking, and then you can see the building-based landscaping as it wraps around the building in this location. And then, again, as I mentioned, these buildings are all exactly the same, so it'll be somewhat of a repeat. You can see here on the north and eastern perimeter, you can see those corridor street landscape plantings, and then additionally building-based landscaping and parking lot perimeter landscaping that wraps. There is an easement that runs through this area here, so you can see there's an area where they haven't provided landscaping around that parking because there are some restrictions on about plantings within that easement, so they are avoiding that easement with those plantings, but they have put the landscaping everywhere where they're able, other than that easement. On the final building, again, you're going to see a similar proposal here. Again, you see the building-based landscaping that wraps around those three sides of the building, parking lot perimeter landscaping, and then there's some additional landscaping you can see wrapped in through here. Again, a lot of details here, but that just kind of gives you a brief overview of the landscape plantings. And again, I've indicated previously, they do meet the landscaping requirements of the ordinance for buildings in the general industrial zoning district. Couple final things. On the signage plan, again, as I mentioned, these are speculative, so there's no tenants identified, so they haven't proposed any specific signage for these sites. Each building is permitted to have a ground monument sign on any public road frontages. Likely, these could be either single or multi-tenant buildings. For a single-tenant building, it's a 32-square-foot sign up to 8 feet in height. For a multi-tenant building, they do get some additional square footage and heights that go up to 48 square feet and 12 feet in height. And that'll be dependent on whether it's a single or multi-tenant building. And then in terms of wall signage, for any frontage that they have on a public street, we essentially use a linear footage of the building, calculate how much square footage they're allowed to have on wall signage, and then they will propose those at the appropriate time once tenants are identified. And so we'll walk through it again. Before they're permitted to get any sign permits, they would have to submit a sign package to our office, ensure that we can have the ability to review that and approve that before installing any signage on the site, and so that we expect that at some point in the future once tenants are identified for these buildings. And finally, again, I mentioned architecture previously. This gives you a rough idea what these buildings are all, the elevations are all exactly the same. On the bottom here, you see the front elevation of the building. It is a tilt-up concrete panel building, and then you've got three entrances, two at the corners and then one right in the center. So again, as I mentioned, this could be a multi-tenant building. So theoretically, if you've got these three entrances here, this could be demisable into three 3 tenant spaces, or again, it could be used as anything, one, 2, or 3 tenants. So they have designed some flexibility in the buildings to allow for either a multi-tenant or single-tenant building based on these elevations as you see here. I'll scroll down, just again, this kind of shows you the front and sides of the building, what those would look like. And then the rear of the building would be here. Again, the rear building, as I mentioned, would be where you see all the dock doors, which is represented here. And again, this does meet all the architectural requirements of the general industrial zoning district. So in conclusion, staff has reviewed the submitted development plan and finds compliance with the Unified Development Ordinance requirements for the subject site. Staff recommends approval of the subject development plan contingent on the following conditions. One, that the applicant adequately address any remaining City of Lebanon Technical Advisory Committee comments prior to application for any permits or site improvements. And 2, the applicant shall submit a lighting plan meeting all applicable UDO requirements prior to application for any building permits or site improvements. And number 3, the signage plan, the applicant shall submit a signage plan indicating location and elevations of all proposed signs and receive sign permits before any sign installation. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions from the commission? Hearing none, is the applicant here?
Ryan Robinson with HWC Engineering. We're the civil engineers representing Indiana Lebanon John Shaw LLC.
Yeah, want to tell us anything you want to add that Ben didn't include?
No, I think Ben pretty much nailed all of it. The only thing I think that we additionally are still working through are some of the off-site utility extensions. With some of the developments to the north, we're still figuring out the sewer and water to the site, as well as the power. So those are still things we're working through, addressing the City of Lebanon utility comments, and working with them to make sure that we get all those things to the site.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant from the commission? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. If anybody would like to speak on this project, make sure you're signed in, state your name and address. We'll go ahead and open the public hearing. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Do we have any further questions for the applicant or Ben? Okay, we'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve docket number 22-76 contingent upon the following. First, the applicant adequately addresses any remaining TAC committee comments prior to issuance of building permits. 2, the lighting plan meet all applicable UDO requirements prior to building permits. And number 3, signage plan shall be submitted prior to proposed signage on the building.
I'll second it.
Okay, got a first and a second. Kelly, will you call the roll?
Dan Bayshore? Yes. Kevin Krulik?
Yes.
Corey Coots?
Yes.
Keith Campbell?
Yes.
Brian Tandy?
Yes.
Heather Schaller?
Yes.
Ellie Mullen?
Yes.
Lori Gross?
Yes.
It's approved. Congratulations. Good luck. Next on the agenda is docket 22-03, Eli Lilly and Company requesting development plan approval for the construction of a multi-building pharmaceutical research and development and manufacturing campus. Property is located on a 602.42 acre parcel, generally located to the north of County Road 375 North, to the east of I-65, and to the south of County Road 450 North. Ben?
Thank you, Mr. Tandy. Just kind of walk through the last 3 items on the agenda tonight are all related to the development of the Eli Lilly site. First here, we have the development plan, which would be essentially everything within the borders of the property, looking at where the building layouts, similar to what we just did with Cedars at Lebanon, looking at the building layouts, the landscaping, road layouts, or I guess internal road system layouts, not public roads necessarily. But looking at the overall development site, and I've got some slides I'll go through here to kind of walk you through that. There's a lot to see and a lot to walk through, so I'll try to be as efficient as possible. I know we have a lot of folks here interested in this too. So what we're going to do is on these first 2 items, the development plan and the primary plat, Those are all contingent on some other items being accomplished, namely, the third item or the last item on the agenda is related to vacating Whit Road. So the development plan approval and the primary plat approval are essentially conditional on that theoretically being approved. So what we're going to do tonight is we're going to walk through it. I'll do a presentation, applicant will present, we'll ask questions from the Plan Commission, we'll open the public hearings, but then my recommendation, I'll review this again when I get to each one, is I'm recommending on both the development plan and the primary plat that we have a motion to continue those to the February meeting, again, to allow everybody time just to finalize all the details that we're still working on, address any comments or questions or concerns that come up either from the Plan Commission or from the public, and then come back next month and make sure we got all those items accomplished. On the last one, the vacation, I'll get to that more specifics when we get to that, obviously, but we will be looking for a recommendation from the Plan Commission on that one to go to the council. But to start off with the development plan, if they want to pull up the screen for me, we'll kind of walk through a quick overview. Just a reminder of where the site's located. I-65 to the west here, CSX Railroad is to the east of the site, and then the immediate boundaries are 450 north and 375 north you see here. 300 north is just off the aerial just to down here where the existing bridge, 300 north, that comes across here. So this is the northern part of the community along the interstate, just east of the interstate. This was just recently annexed late last summer. And was assigned the general industrial zoning district with some use restrictions. The use that's being proposed here is permitted in the general industrial district, but certainly we have a lot to go through in terms of the buffer requirements, the other site landscaping requirements, and then all the elevations and all those site layouts. So I'll get to all that here in a second, but I just wanted to kind of remind everybody where the site is located that we're talking about. So Lily is going to walk through how the site operates in a lot more detail. But there's two elements to the site. Let me zoom in a little bit so you can see it just a little bit better. And the primary plat will address this some too. There's essentially two projects in one on here. One is the LP1 site, and I'll let Lily walk through exactly what each one of these means. And then there's the LP2 site that you see down here in the southwest corner. So you can see that the buildings on the site are all essentially in this orange or in this tan area that you see here. There are some additional expansion opportunities scattered through these buildings, but then their primary amenity area and drainage will be to the west here, and then they've got some additional area to the north that could be at some point future development. At this point, it's going to be essentially left undeveloped, could be farmed even, because there's a large enough area to do so. So the developed area is really only 200 to 300 acres, maybe about half the site of the overall site, but there's a lot happening in each one of these sites. So let me pull out my staff report and we'll start getting to some of the details here. But this is essentially the overall site. A couple other elements maybe I should touch on before we get into details. The primary employee and customer, I say primary, it is the employee and customer entrance. This is a highly secure site, so it's all fenced in. The entrance for employee and other visitors would be here at the south end off of Whit Road. You can kind of see a road that jogs off of Whit Road to a visitor's entrance here, a gated entrance. Their truck access will come off of 375, so trucks would come off of 39 westbound on 375 and then enter the site at this eastern corner here. Certainly Whit Road to the north here, this will not be regularly used. This is essentially just an emergency entrance or exit you see here, so there would not be regular ingress or egress from the site from this entrance to the north here. We'll get into further details on the road infrastructure when we get to the vacation here, but essentially what you have is Whit Road would come southbound, and then you would be able to turn on 450 and head out to 39. If you're coming northbound on Whit Road, you'd either enter the site or you could turn and go eastbound on 375 out to 39. That's what's being proposed. So there aren't necessarily any dead ends on either side. There would still be the ability to come down Whit Road and go out to State Road 39. So in terms of some of the specifics here, I'm going to pull out my notes. So the first thing I wanted to quickly touch on is just a quick high-level overview of what we're seeing here on this overall site. And again, Lily will explain in much more detail what each of these means, and some of them I'm not even sure that I could pronounce very well, but this just kind of walk you through the overall. Again, as I mentioned here off of Whit Road, you see the visitor center. And then you've got the LP2 facility that sits here to the west of that visitor center, and there is an office component and a manufacturing component and a small warehouse component that's associated with that building. And then on the LP1 site, you can kind of see this collection of users. Their primary admin facility would be located here, and let me get my notes. The admin facility is a 200,000 square foot building. So again, kind of thinking about the scale here, that's a 200,000 square foot building. It is a 2-story building, so the actual footprint of it's about 90,000 square feet. So that's the building you see here. Moving east of here, you have the 2 peptides building. Those are essentially mirror images of each other. The footprint is about 100,000 square feet, but it's a 3-story building, so it's about 330,000 square feet is the actual square footage of the buildings when you consider all of the 3 stories. As you move north here is the Oligo building. The Oligo building is, again, a 2-story building. The footprint's about 50,000 square feet, but in total, there's about 120,000 square feet in this building. Moving north from here, you got the Small Molecule building. Again, this is a 3-story building with a footprint of about 55,000 square feet and about 150,000 total square feet in the building. Moving to the central area here, you've got the Central Utility building that's located here right in the center. That's about it's a 2-story building, about 95,000 square feet total, about 50,000 square foot footprint. Moving east from here, this is the Solid Waste and Recycling building. That building is about 25,000 square feet. Up here, we've got a centralized warehouse for the overall site. The warehouse is about 140,000 square feet that you see here. And then one final building on here is a fire station. So this is a private fire station that will be owned and manned by Eli Lilly. Again, they can kind of walk you through a little bit here, but they've got some very specific requirements for responses and the types of responses that might be needed in here. So they will be constructing a fire station that will be manned by Eli Lilly to address any of the needs that they have on the site here. That's about a 7,000 square foot fire station. So in total, you consider LP1 and LP2 buildings, you got, let me find my total here. It's about 1.7 million square feet in total on the entire site between the 12 different buildings that I just walked through right there. A couple other things to note, in addition to the road transportation entrances and network, they do also have a rail siding that would also provide access to the site. And so as you can see here, the rail sidings come off and split to the north off the siding. So I guess there are some questions about how trains would access the site. What would happen is a southbound train would come southbound, past the rail siding, and then they'd back into the rail siding, unhook any cars that are leaving there, connect to any cars that they're picking up, and then they would leave southbound. So the train would be sitting essentially in the area that I'm kind of highlighting here. Now, depending on how long the train is, they may go further south. It really just depends on how long the train is, but they would be sitting on the train in this manner, or sitting on the tracks in this manner here, heading southbound. Northbound, they wouldn't be able to obviously back into that area and drop off cars, so it would all be southbound trains that would be backing in there. Again, they can talk a little bit more about how many trains per week they expect. I don't think it's a significant amount of traffic, but they can talk a little bit more about that. So just wanted to highlight that too while we're looking at the overall site. Moving forward then, that's not what I was looking for. I think I need to zoom out a little bit. Here we go. Let me maybe back up a slide here so I don't miss anything. So similar to what I did last time, we'll talk a little bit about the development standards for the overall site. Let me back up to the one I was just looking at. Whoops. Going all the way back to the beginning. These files are so big, my computer's not working real well. So looking again at the lot size, and we'll go to the primary plat here in a little bit, but there are 2 lots that will be created. One would be for LP1, and the second would be for LP2. So there's 2 lots to be created. Parcel 1, which would be LP1 site, is about 500 acres. Parcel 2 is about 78 acres, so they again meet the 5-acre minimum lot size requirement. In terms of lot widths, again, with the sizes, minimum lot width really is an issue, though. So 200 feet is the minimum. We got parcel 1, the minimum lot width is 2,600 feet, and parcel 2 is 1,300 feet, so they more than meet the lot width requirements. Front setbacks, so what we'll be looking at is setbacks off of Whit Road here, 375 north here, and 450 north here. So on 375 North, the closest buildings you see here are the peptide buildings. Those are about 321 feet from the right-of-way on 375 North. So again, they more than meet the 100-foot front setback. In fact, it's about 3 times the front setback. To 450 North, the warehouse building is the closest building, and that's about 1,500 feet, I believe, if I've got those measurements right, from 450 North. From I-65, I didn't mention I-65. The LP2 building is the closest to I-65, and that's actually 1,500 feet. I think I got my measurement wrong here on the warehouse. I think I did it from the small molecule building. So it's actually probably more like 1,000, between 700 and 1,000 feet here. So I think I got my measurement wrong there. LP2 is about 1,500 feet from I-65, so again, more than meets the setback requirements. The one location where we are working on an adjustment is to Whit Road. Again, 100-foot front setback requirement on Whit Road. The visitor center, I think, is about 70 feet from Whit Road, the way it's proposed right now. So that does need to scoot back another, it's like about 25 or 30 feet. They're already aware of that and are working on that. That's why we wanted to come to you tonight and present all this and correct some of those few items that are still outstanding and come back to you next month with everything finalized. Side setbacks, really the side setbacks we're looking at are adjacent to the CSX property line, and then the south property line that's south of LP2. So from CSX, the closest building would be the fire station, and the fire station is approximately 490 feet from this eastern property line, so again, more than meeting that 50-foot setback requirement. And then to the south, the LP2 building is the closest to the south property line, and it's about 820 feet from that south property line. And one final item I mentioned on here, the maximum height requirements in the ID district are 50 feet. These buildings range anywhere up to 125 feet to where they're being proposed. This is a variance that is going to be heard by the Board of Zoning Appeals at their February meeting. Again, one of those outstanding items that needs to be addressed before we could approve the development plan. So that is an item that would go to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and there's a couple other minor ones as well that go to the Board of Zoning Appeals at their February meeting for consideration. So once the decision is made by the board on those items, this would certainly come back to you with any changes that might need to be made based on what's determined at the board. Moving forward then on the parking. So I will just, at the high level overview, you've got parking at LP2, you got parking at the visitor center, there's some parking at the fire station, the peptide buildings, the admin buildings, oligo building, small molecule, and warehouse. They did provide a calculation for us. We looked at essentially the office manufacturing and warehouse spaces. And looking at the calculation, they're required to have about 600 parking spaces, 608 to be exact, based on those numbers. I put in the staff report to be determined, but we have since been able to calculate that number of how many parking they have, and it's about 880 spaces if I've counted correctly. So they obviously have about 300 more spaces than they're required at a minimum, and of course they're looking at different shifts. So shift turnaround, if you got some people coming and some people going, they wanted to make sure they had additional parking spaces there at shift changes to make sure that they had more than adequate number of parking spaces there. On a lighting plan, that would be the next one that I got to a little quickly. We're still working to finalize some of the details on this plan as well, but this just kind of gives you a high-level overview. What they've done is essentially looked at some of the primary areas that would be lit and what the maximum intensity of light would be in those areas. What we need to add additionally is our requirements are to have a certain intensity of light at the property lines that we have to review. So in the cases of most of these property lines, the requirement is going to be either 0.3 or 0.5 foot candles. And so they will have to add some additional information to this plan to show us that they meet those requirements at the site, and also provide proper shielding to make sure that there's no glares or anything from the lights that would extend beyond the property boundaries. So what this shows you here is that the blue area is the lower intensity. It's about 1 foot candle max on the interior roadway. At entrances, they're going to try to get to about 2 foot candle max. And then when you get to kind of this interior area here, you're going to have more like a 2 foot candle maximum. And then this center section here, which is their tank farm and other things were located right in the center, it could be up to 10 foot candles max. So we're talking about, again, is we need to know at the property lines what those foot candle measurements are going to be, make sure they're 0.3 or 0.5 wherever is required, and then make sure any of these areas would have the higher lighting intensity are properly shielded so that there's no light spillage on those adjacent property lines. So again, more information to come on this one. We're working with them on that as we speak and make sure that we have all this properly addressed before we come back to the February meeting. On the landscaping, again, I'll do this at a high level because we'll be here for another hour if I try to walk you through how many plants are actually on the site in specific detail. So this first plan I'm showing you here is the buffer plan. And what they're proposing here is to meet all of our buffer requirements along each perimeter of the site. So what you see here in the blue is a type B interstate buffer. So we have the interstate overlay that this site needs to address. And so the interstate overlay district requires a type B buffer, which is 8 trees and 15 large shrubs per 100 lineal feet, plus a 6-foot berm or 8-foot opaque fence. We're working with them exactly how they're going to address that berm or fence requirement. They're talking about using an actual wall, a decorative wall along there. We're working with them height and design and things like that. It might be an option for that. What they've shown here would be the mound and the trees and shrubs, and you can kind of see that represented in that blue area all along there. In addition to the type B buffer for the interstate, we've also talked to them about proper screening for these dark gray squares are solar panels, which in our current ordinance is considered to be mechanical equipment that requires a solid screen at least 2 feet taller than that equipment. So that's why we're addressing, right now they're proposing to have evergreen plantings that would be at least 2 feet taller than those panels. But they're also, again, as I mentioned, considering that decorative wall that would also match that height, provide that screening necessary. So one of those two, and I think it's probably leaning towards the wall because it provides a more substantive screening or more substantial screen. And so we're working with on those details. We'll make sure you have those ironed out for you when we come to the next meeting. On the north property line, because this is all ag zone property that's in the county currently, we've got a type F buffer, which is our most strict buffer type. And the type F buffer is 8 trees and 15 large shrubs every 100 feet plus either a 14-foot berm or a 6-foot berm plus an 8-foot opaque fence. And so that's what you see represented along these northern and eastern boundaries, where the adjacent properties would be still in the county zoning district and zoned agricultural. So that's what you see represented here. And then the remaining one would be this orange area. The properties adjacent are all zoned general industrial, but we did discuss providing a buffer along here, and this would be a type D buffer. And the type D buffer, let me make sure I'm reading the right one here. Yeah, I think I read the wrong one. So the type D buffer is 8 trees and 15 large shrubs plus the 6-foot earthen berm. And again, we're working with them on exactly how that's going to be laid out, but that's what you see proposed here is that type D buffer, which is the trees and shrubs plus the 6-foot berm. So just a quick planting count for you here. They had a summary page, which I won't go through, but the landscaping provided that you see here is approximately 2,700 trees and 4,200 shrubs on the buffer perimeter. That's the plantings for the buffer. So again, we got some substantial plantings. Again, it's a very large site, so there's some substantial plantings you see here. The next then would be the landscaping for the interior of the site. And again, we're looking at this from a very high level, so it's a little hard to see the details, but everything you see here that looks like a little black collection, it's actually a collection of trees and shrubs. So you can see that there are significant plantings, lot plantings that you see. This is essentially the detention facility, which is about 40 acres in size, plus a significant amount of tree and shrub plantings to the north. This is actually a prairie area that they have to the south, and then there'll be amenities they'll provide in this area for their employees, walking paths, some overlooks along the trail, overlooks along the trail and adjacent to the pond, which at 40 acres is a pretty good size. But they're essentially reforesting this area and then providing some additional prairie plantings here. Then you can see some significant lot plantings around the LP2 building and then around the perimeters of the LP1 site. In addition to those lot plantings, they also have parking lot, perimeter and interior landscaping on each one of the parking lots that you see highlighted in purple. We are still reviewing all those to make sure we've got all the plants that are required in all the required locations, but on first review, it does appear that they have everything. There's a couple of small spots where we might need to move some trees and shrubs around to make sure we've got that continuous perimeter about the parking lot, but it appears right now that they've got the correct number of plantings all around the perimeter on both and in the interior. And then each one of these buildings also does include a building-based landscaping package that's associated with them too. So again, significant plantings along the interior of the site. And this will kind of give you a little bit of an idea what some of the views from the perimeter of the facility might, or what, proposed to look like. So this you see here is the entrance, and show you a little bit what the landscaping will look like along Whit Road. This would be along 375, so if you're on the south side of the site looking north into the site, this shows the berm that I mentioned, along with the tree and shrub plantings that are required. At the turn, where you go from Whit to 375, this again looks towards their administration building. You kind of see that represented here, looking what that berm and plantings is proposed. This is what the buffer along the interstate would look like. So you have both the corridor buffer, then also the evergreen plantings behind that would screen the solar panels. Again, that evergreen planting behind may become a solid wall, and that would even provide further screening. That kind of gives you a look from I-65. And then this just kind of gives you an overall look at the site. This is actually from the northwest looking southeast over the detention facility. This is the LP1 site that you see here, and then this is the LP2 site. Again, they haven't shown in this rendering every tree and shrub that they proposed on the overall site, but that gives you an idea just of the overall site, what it looked like from a rendering point, perspective. On the landscaping, I have some notes overall. So when you consider both the buffer plantings and the interior plantings together, the combined total is about 6,300 trees and about a little over 7,500 shrubs. So their landscape plan proposal is just short of 14,000 plants on their overall plan. Again, it's a large site, but there's significant landscaping that they need to provide in order to meet our requirements. On the signage, while I'm on this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea, and I'll show you some of the renderings of the buildings here in a second. They'll show you some with their building signage. Again, it's a very simple package. This is the entrance sign that you see at their entrance on Whit Road. It's a ground monument sign that meets the requirements of our ordinance, which would be 32 square feet and then 8 feet tall. So that they are showing a ground sign that would be near that entrance there. And then we'll go into the architecture a little bit here. And whoops, went a little fast there. And this gives you an idea, again, wall signage, again, simple red script that says Lilly, and there's a sign like that similar on just about all the buildings that you'll see. This also gives you an idea. I don't have all of the elevations in here, but you'll see there's a pretty consistent theme that is the white that you see here. Again, this is the administration building, so it has a pretty significant office component that you see here on this part of the elevation, and then the remaining parts of the elevation are the white that you see here. And so here's an example of a couple others. This is the Peptides building. Again, this is a 3-story building, so that's why you see that there's windows on the second and third floors that you see here. Again, a pretty significant office component that you see represented here, but then the larger part of the building, which is what you see here, that's the 3-story part of the building. Again, you see a pretty consistent theme with the materials and the design of the building. Again, this is the Oligo building, so again, you'll see the office component that you see here, and then again, a very similar style of architecture in terms of the materials that's used. The final one that I have in here, I think, is the LP2 building, and this is actually, I'm going to have to zoom out for this one now. This is a rendering. This is actually looking at it from the south. So the office portions, what you see kind of wraps around the east and north sides of the building here. Again, you'll see a very consistent theme with the white material. And then again, as I mentioned previously, this does have a warehouse component that's attached to it. As you see here, the interstate would be about 1,500 feet in the distance this way. And so, yeah, again, we're kind of looking to the northwest over the building that you see here. Let's see if I've got any other. I think that may be my last slide. So I've gone through a lot of information there. There's probably a lot more we can discuss if you have any specific questions. Again, as I mentioned earlier, on this one, because we have some outstanding items that are going to the Board of Zoning Appeals and also the vacation of the road, we do recommend that there be a vote to continue this item to the February meeting, and we will need a vote of the Plan Commission to do that because we advertised for a public hearing tonight. We'll still hold that, but we'll need a vote of the Plan Commission to continue this to the February meeting, at which time we'll address any concerns that the Plan Commission has or anything raised during the public hearing. and go back through some of those highlights and then answer any further questions you might have. So again, on this one, staff is recommending continuing this item so we can work out until we can finalize items related to the Board of Zoning Appeals and the vacation of the road. So that's what I have here. What I would just make sure, Mr. Tandy, in terms of the public hearing, we want to make sure that any comments are based on the development plan. We certainly will get to the plat and the vacation of Whit Road on the next two items. So we want to make sure that the comments in the public hearing for this one are related to the development of the overall site, as was presented here, and then we'll get to the items related to Whit Road and the plat and the next two items. So with that, I'm sure there are questions, and I'd be happy to try to address them. Certainly the applicant is here, and they'll be able to provide some further overview of the site as well.
Thank you, Ben. Any questions for Ben? Okay. The applicant, go ahead.
Right. Yep.
Will they be here?
Yes, they'll put them on.
Oh, okay, perfect. Hi, good evening. My name is Jennifer Massey from Lilly at Lilly Technology Center South in Indianapolis. Sorry, the slides, oh, there they are, thank you.
Just real quick, too.
Yep.
The mic is linked up to our TV feed, so make sure you're
Sure.
talking into it.
Yep, can do, thank you. So appreciate the time here tonight to introduce our campus development plan and also introduce Lilly. We are new to this community and to Lebanon, so we do thank you for the time. As been noted, we are planning to come back in February to seek approval, and we'll take into account the feedback that we've received from the TAC committee and also feedback here tonight as well. Let me make sure I can work this. Okay, so I'd like to start with just a general overview of Eli Lilly and Company, our history, and then a little bit about the investment here in Lebanon. So Lilly is a global pharmaceutical company. Our purpose is highlighted there in red. It is to unite caring and discovery to create medicines that make life better for people around the world. So that's what got us started as a company more than 146 years ago. That's what drives us today. It's innovating new medicines to help patients. We do reach 47 million patients worldwide, and recently we've launched 10 new medicines. We also have a great pipeline, so we intend to launch additional medicines. And because of that, we are currently investing in our manufacturing capacity. That includes the more than $2.1 billion investment here in Lebanon. Our campus is 600 acres here, and as was mentioned, it consists of two separate manufacturing sites. So LP1 manufacturing site is the larger of those, and LP1 will be manufacturing API molecules. So API is active pharmaceutical ingredient. That's what does the magic in the medicine, so that is what produces the therapeutic effect. So it is a very important part of what we do, making APIs. The second site, LP2, that will be a cell and gene therapy site. That will provide cutting-edge new therapies for patients. And in combination, the two sites together will be providing medicines for patients that are facing cancer, that are facing diabetes, and other serious illnesses. When the sites are operational, we will be creating over 500 new roles. That's a variety of different roles throughout the site, including hourly, operational, technical, or technician and analyst roles, as well as professional engineering, science roles, and site leadership roles as well. Okay, so as I mentioned, we are currently investing in creating new manufacturing capacity. When we do that, when we look at where to place new manufacturing sites, we go through a global assessment process to evaluate the different options. What we look at in that assessment process, there's multiple facets. Workforce availability is one. Proximity to STEM universities is another. So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math. That's important to us at our manufacturing sites because we are highly technical, highly advanced manufacturing sites. We also look at local economic conditions and transportation access in the area. And across all those different facets, Central Indiana and specifically Lebanon rated very, very highly. Locating the campus here provides us with close proximity to our existing manufacturing sites in Indianapolis. That offers broad employee development opportunities between the sites. And the campus here also brings us closer to Purdue, who is a very good partner, again, in the STEM areas for us and for the state overall. Lilly also has a really strong history here in central Indiana, so we wanted to continue to build on that. So Lilly as a company works to positively impact our society and our communities that we work in. We've been doing that in central Indiana for a long time through various programs. So we have programs like our Lilly Global Day of Service. This is where we dedicate employee time to improvement projects in our local communities. We also offer an employee charitable donation matching program, and we support the United Way of Central Indiana. We are actually the largest donation contributor to that organization. We do look forward to continuing that legacy of community partnership here in Lebanon. Okay, so I'll go into a little more of the development plan specifics now. So what you see here highlighted in red is the Lilly campus as part of the overall LEAP district. So the 600-acre Lilly campus is located in the northeast corner. The southern border of our campus is within the LEAP district, so it flows into the LEAP district. And as was mentioned earlier, the employee entrance and our delivery entrance will both be on the south side, so they will be going straight into the LEAP district. From a timeline perspective, once we have planning approval, we expect to begin construction in spring of this year, 2023. That's after site preparation. And then the site will be operational in the 2026 to 2027 timeframe. So the picture here is showing an aerial view of the lot and the campus boundaries. We did talk through a little bit of this, so I'll go through it quickly. On the north side there, the campus boundary is 450 north. On the west, it is I-65. The southern border of the campus is north of 300, connecting to Whit Road, and then 375 north. And then the eastern campus border is just east of the railroad, the existing rail line there. The entire campus has been annexed into Lebanon and is industrial zoning. As was stated earlier, there are some interstate overlay zone requirements because of our proximity there to 65. Okay, so this rendering here shows our finished campus, and this represents the relative size, the orientation, and the location of the manufacturing buildings within those two manufacturing sites. So landscaping is not fully shown on this rendering. We did talk a little bit about it earlier. We do plan to meet all landscaping requirements. As stated previously, the campus is divided into two separate manufacturing sites. LP1, I'm going to try and use the cursor here. LP1 here has 4 manufacturing buildings and is located near the southern central part of our campus. LP2 has 1 manufacturing building and is located on the lower central part of the campus. The placement of our buildings here is very intentional to keep them in the lower and center part of the 600 acres. And that is really to maintain large borders on the west, the north, and the east side. So the closest distance between our border and the manufacturing buildings is here along 375. That is more than 300 feet, which is still greater than the 100 feet requirement. And then on the west, the north, and the east side, those borders are all greater than 800 feet between our manufacturing buildings and the campus borders. During our assessment, as I mentioned earlier, when we looked at the global assessment, we did identify the need for 600 contiguous acres that are not intersected by public transit. That's to ensure security and also to maintain, again, the central campus design and keep those facilities away from the borders of our campus. You'll hear, I know, in just a second from IEDC on their plans for Whit Road and how that will play into this campus design. So we mentioned the 4 manufacturing facilities here. I'll talk a little bit more about them within LP1. So LP1 has 2 peptide synthesis and purification buildings. Those are these 2 that are the most southern manufacturing buildings within LP1. LP1 also has a small molecule synthesis building and an oligonucleotide synthesis and purification building Again, those are all producing API molecules, which is active pharmaceutical ingredients. LP1 also has several other buildings that are supporting manufacturing, the manufacturing buildings. That includes the warehouse, central utilities, and liquid material storage, and then our solid waste handling facility, which will be used for on-site waste. LP1 also has an administrative and lab building. This is really the gateway into the LP1 site after you enter the campus as a whole. And the design here within LP1 itself is to surround our manufacturing buildings, our main site buildings around the utilities area. That provides some screening from the utilities area, as well as landscaping that will provide screening. Because of that orientation, we do plan to seek a variance to the required masonry screening of the utilities area, and that'll be at the February Board of Zoning Appeals meeting as well. So LP2, moving on to LP2, this is located just east of the Whit Road entrance, and it will have one manufacturing and administrative facility. It's a little hard to see on this because it's small. That is the big mass you see here. A utilities building, that's the small one here, and then there's a spine that connects the two of those. Ben mentioned our campus visitor center, that will be here. So the visitor center is intended to serve as a central location for people coming onto the campus. That would include visitors, vendors, or other partners, and also regulators. So we are highly regulated. So it is important to have a central location for people to come onto the site and then flow into the two manufacturing sites, the two separate manufacturing sites. We are, like I said, in the interstate overlay zone, which will require that LP2 here face the interstate because of the flow from the site. And then again, given the distance, which is 1,500 feet to the interstate, we also plan to seek a variance to have LP2 face the center of campus to maintain that flow, and also to allow two dock doors on the side that is facing the interstate. So, in addition to all of that, I wanted to talk a little bit about employee amenities. Ben touched on a few, but we will have an employee gym, we'll have employee cafeterias. We also will have some green spaces for employees to walk on site. We also have a fire station on site as well. And then in pursuit of sustainability, we have a private solar farm that we expect to provide up to 15% of the site's energy demand, so it reduces the load that we're bringing in from off-site. Okay, so a little bit about the entrances here. We touched on it just for a second. On the north side of the site, we do have an emergency entrance. So this is at the intersection of Whit Road with the campus boundary. During operation, that entrance will not be regularly used, meaning we will not have employees going in and out of that entrance, but it will be maintained for emergency use. Our main employee entrance is here on the south, and it's just along Whit Road, just north of 300. Site deliveries are separated, and that is in an effort to reduce that traffic and make sure that we're separating employees and deliveries. And then during construction, these three entrances will be used. So in the construction phase, we expect to have two open at all time. We also expect to stagger our construction start times and manage deliveries so that we're reducing traffic congestion during construction. Parking, as was mentioned, during construction and during operation of the sites will all be on campus. We do have an existing rail line that was mentioned. So we do not expect the number of transits along that rail line to increase. The number of cars per transit, we do expect to increase. But we are working with CSX to make sure that our spur is designed to reduce any impact on traffic in the area. So these are closer ups of the renderings that were shown, and we wanted to just hit on those for a couple reasons. So what you're looking at here is a rendering looking north into the campus, again from within the LEAP district. This is along 375 between Whit Road and the railroad track. And what you see here is you're looking at LP1, specifically the peptide synthesis building there. It's been mentioned, we have some buildings that will be going in for height variance. This is the highest height building, or representative of the highest height building. Again, the boundary here is greater than the required 100 feet. It's closer to, it is over 300. And landscaping at the border also provides screen. So the building heights are really required based off of the process needs. So part of that is cleaning requirements. So again, we are making pharmaceutical products here. Those require us to meet cleaning requirements. Additionally, height helps us reduce the overall footprint by piping reduction as well. The second rendering shows, this is just south and west of the previous rendering, and it shows our LP1 admin building, which again is that kind of gateway into LP1. And then just past that, you can see the peptide synthesis building again. In contrast, that highest height building, Peptides 1, which is representative of our highest height building, is shown here in a rendering from I-65. And then LP2, as I mentioned, is also shown here from I-65. This also shows some of the landscaping that will be in place for screening with the solar farm. And then this is the last rendering that we have. This is a view of the campus from the north along 450, and you can see the berm there and the landscaping. The railroad track is actually behind that, and then the manufacturing buildings are located significantly beyond that. So that's the content that we wanted to share tonight. I did want to say thank you again for allowing us some time. I know it's a lot of information and you have a busy agenda. We also want to say thanks to the planning department staff. They've helped us understand the approval process and the IEDC as well. We also want to thank the public for their participation in this process. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Massey, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. As you know, my name is Kent Franzen, and I'm counsel for the Indiana Economic Development Corporation in this proceeding. Also with us tonight, in addition to Ms. Massey, you've already heard from, is Michael Watts, who's a professional engineer with Pure Development. He's going to talk after I'm done about the traffic and the road improvements aspect of this project. There are several other people here tonight from Eli Lilly and Company. I'm not going to introduce them because they don't plan to speak, but they are here and able to answer questions that you might have that someone like me wouldn't be able to have. My plan to talk here for a few minutes is just about the process and the grounds for the application that's pending before you tonight to vacate a portion of Whit Road. Yes?
Focus on the development plan now. We'll get to the vacation here in a second. We'll do those separately.
Okay. I'm not going to talk about the development plan for good reason. I thought we were going to talk about the vacation, but Ben hadn't made his report yet. So we appreciate your tabling that till we get through the vacation proceedings. So I'm sorry for jumping ahead. Go ahead.
That works.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that kind of concludes our presentation on the development plan application. If anybody has any questions for me or Jennifer or anybody else from the Eli Lilly team based on what you've heard, be happy to try to address them for you now. If there's anything that you've looked at that felt like we needed to address further for the next meeting, we can certainly do that as well. Just wanted to get your comments. And then once we have those and we address those, then we'll again hold the public hearing related to the development plan specifically. We'll hold a public hearing for the development plan. Then the next one will be the primary plat. We'll hold a separate public hearing related to that. And then the final item will be the Whit Road vacation. We'll hold a public hearing for that one also. So the public hearing that we'll do right now will be just based on this overall development plan application. We'll get to those other items in a separate public hearing. So if you have any questions for me or the applicant based on the presentation, be happy to address them.
Any questions for Ben or the applicant currently?
I just have a question for Lily.
Yeah.
So, peptides, active pharmaceutical ingredients. We're not talking chemical pharmaceutical here. Are we talking biotech, biopharma?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the site as a whole has a mix. So cell and gene therapy would be advanced technology, more aqueous manufacturing processes. We do have traditional small molecule manufacturing, which is chemical synthesis processes on the LP1 side in those API processes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions on the development plan tonight? Okay, we'll open up the public hearing. Just note, make sure you sign in, state your name and address, keep it to the development plan, and try to stay within about 3 minutes. Okay, we'll open the hearing. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing for tonight. Any further questions or comments from the commission or Ben or Lily?
One other thing I wanted to point out is we held the public hearing tonight based on the notices we sent out. We certainly can open the public hearing again at the next meeting if the commission so chooses, if there's comments that may come up at the next meeting. But I just wanted to point that out also, as we can reopen at the next meeting if anybody has any comments for the next meeting after they've had a chance to review all this information as well.
Thank you for that clarification, Ben.
And then just one final item, then just again to reiterate, what we're looking for tonight is a motion to continue this to the February meeting to allow some of these other items to be addressed. And then we'll come back and do a follow-up, shorter presentation next month, just as kind of as a refresher. And then we'll be looking for a decision next month.
Yeah, there's no further discussion. I'd entertain a motion. On docket 23-03. Got a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Got a motion and a second. Kelly, you call the roll?
Dan Bayshore. Kevin Krulik.
Yes.
Corey Coots.
Yes.
Keith Campbell.
Yes.
Brian Tandy.
Yes.
Heather Schaller.
Yes.
Ali Mullen.
Yes.
Lori Gross.
Yes.
Thank you. Next up is docket 22-01. The Indiana Economic Development Corporation is requesting a primary plat approval for the proposed two-lot subdivision for Eli Lilly. Ben, want to tell us about that?
So again, similar to the development plan, which we just reviewed, this is one that we'll be requesting a continuance to the February meeting. The primary reason for that is because it's contingent upon the decision being made on with the Whit Road right-of-way. So again, just as if they will pull the screen up for you, just a real quick reminder of the overall site. This is the 602-acre site that you see here. And in terms of the primary plat, it's a little bit hard to see here again because it's so big, but essentially they're going to create a two-lot subdivision. Parcel 1 would be a majority of it, about 500 acres that I'm kind of outlining here. And then parcel 2, which would be for LP2, as we've talked about, would be this parcel down here. It's about 78 acres. So in addition to creating those two parcels, there's also right-of-way dedications along 375 and along 450, again, to accommodate some of the improvements that we'll talk about here in a moment when we get to the vacation. And then this is obviously highlighting the section of Whit Road that is proposed to be vacated as part of this next discussion. But in terms of the primary plat application, it would just be creating a two-lot subdivision, one that's about 500 acres, one that's about 80 acres. So in terms of review for this, we evaluate the lots that are being proposed and make sure that they meet all of the size and width requirements. And then also in terms of the adjacent rights-of-way, city engineer will review those to make sure that they're dedicating the necessary rights-of-way in order to accommodate improvements that are necessary on those roads. So those are the primary things that we look at as it relates to the primary plat. So again, just a quick summary. Minimum lot size requirements are 5 acres in the general industrial zoning district. Parcel 1's about 500 acres, parcel 2 is about 80. Minimum lot width requirement is 200 feet. Parcel 1's 2,600 feet, and parcel 2 is 1,300 feet. And then they do propose to meet all the required setbacks as well. So that is a really quick summary of this. There's certainly creating these two large parcels. They more than meet all of the minimum lot size requirements. They're showing all the necessary rights-of-way on the adjacent roadways, and so they've met all the requirements here. Again, the one outstanding issue would be related to the Whit Road right-of-way, so that's why we are requesting this to be continued to the February meeting to allow that vacation process to play out with the council over the next couple of weeks. So with that, that's a real quick summary of the plat, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions from the commission for Ben on the primary plat? Hearing none, does the applicant have any comment on this?
No, sir, we have nothing to present on the primary plat this evening.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no further questions, we'll open the public comment on docket 22-01 for open the public hearing. Hearing,
I'll apologize again, it's actually 23-01, there was a typo on the agenda. Make sure you mention that you're opening the hearing on 23-01.
right, it's docket 23-01. We will close the hearing if no one is stepping forward. I would entertain a motion to continue this.
I'll make a motion to continue docket 23-01 to February meeting.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Kelly?
You seconded it. Okay. Dan Bayshore? Kevin Krulik?
Yes.
Corey Coontz?
Yes.
Keith Campbell?
Yes.
Brian Tandy?
Yes.
Heather Schaller?
Yes.
Ally Mullen? Yes. Lori Gross?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next up on the new business, docket 23-02. The Indiana Economic Development Corporation is requesting a vacation of a right-of-way for the portion of Whit Road, County Road 150 West, lying south of County Road 450 North and north of County Road 375 North. Ben?
Very good. I'll give you a quick overview here of a variety of different information, then we'll call on the applicants to provide some additional detail on the adjacent road improvements that are being proposed and considered. I'll give you a real quick overview of some of those items, but leave them to discuss some of the details. I've also got the interchange alternatives map, so I'll real quick go over that again as a part of the overall transportation network in the area. I'll just kind of walk through kind of everything that addresses the site. So again, if they want to pull up the screen, just again, a quick reminder, here's the overall Eli Lilly site, the 600-acre site, 65's to the west. State Road 39 is just off the map here to the east. County Road 300 north is just off the map to the south. I'll do an overall map here that goes a little bit wider zoom so you can see some of the transportation network around. The request that's before you here tonight is to vacate the portion of Whit Road that starts at this corner of their property right here and extends through the property to 450 on the north end. So the request is to vacate, in other words, close that portion of the public road to public access. So that is a process that requires first by the UDO to come to the Plan Commission to review based on our overall plan for the area and also considering utility considerations and other developments that might be happening in the area. And then also kind of looking at it from this perspective to make sure that we're not causing any undue issues to the surrounding transportation network. And then the Plan Commission provides a recommendation that will then be forwarded to the council. So this is actually, a vacation is done by ordinance. So that is a council action. So the Plan Commission provides a recommendation, negative recommendation or no recommendation, that then gets forwarded to the council for the council to consider as part of their process to consider that vacation ordinance. So what you will be doing tonight is providing that recommendation to the council. As I mentioned in terms of schedule, we will be seeking that recommendation from you tonight, and then it will go to and be introduced to the council next Monday evening. And then the second Monday in February is when the council would consider the vacation ordinance. And that'll allow that process to run its course before the development plan and plat would come back to you the third Monday in February for consideration. So we want to make sure that that process has an opportunity to run its course, whatever the outcome is, to make sure we have a chance maybe to address by the time we come back to you in February. So just a couple of quick things that I wanted to go through here. The first is, as we were looking at this, there are two primary issues that we wanted to look at. The first would the closure of this road segment or eliminate or significantly impede access to adjacent properties on either side of the closure? So what I'm talking about here is any homes that would remain on Whit Road or 375 or Whit Road or 450 to the north and south of the sites. And so what we wanted to make sure is that no property that would be surrounding this would only have only one route to get to their home or to their property. If something happens on that segment of road and the road's closed for a traffic accident or something like that, we want to make sure that there's an alternative way to get to their property. So what I'll do is I'll let me pull up my second one here, and this zooms out a little further, actually, so 300 North is to the south here. This is actually State Road 47 to the north. This is State Road 39, and then US 52 you kind of see here going off to the northwest. So what we wanted to make sure is that anyone who lived on Whit Road or 450 had two ways to get to their home. And so those two ways would be either from Whit Road or from 450. The applicant from Pure Development will talk here a little bit about the improvements that are being proposed to both of those road segments to improve access based on a traffic study. But we did conclude here that there will still be two ways for everybody who lives on these two road segments to get here. They'll either come from State Road 37 or State Road 39. So they will likely always have one way to get to their home if there happens to be something that closed the other road segment, an accident or something like that. Similarly, here to the south, you will have Whit Road and 375 that are both will receive significant improvements. So again, if there are any homes remaining on 375, they will either access their property from State Road 39 or from Whit Road heading northbound and then eastbound on 375. So again, we've concluded here that any homes that would be primarily affected by the closure here in terms of how they access their property would still have two ways to get to their home. The second big component of what we looked at is if this road segment were closed, what are the impacts on the surrounding transportation network? And so what has been done is there is a series of traffic studies, one that's already been completed last fall, and then a number of them that are still underway right now to look at both existing traffic, how it would be redirected around the site if this road was closed, and then it also looks at a proposed additional traffic in the future, so traffic created by Eli Lilly, or if other sites in this vicinity in the LEAP district also develop. It looks at the projected traffic increases related to that and considers if this road were closed, what improvements would be necessary to the surrounding road system in order to continue to accommodate that traffic in the future. And so that's what this map is intended to try to provide a broad overview of that. In blue, I've highlighted the primary road segments that are being evaluated for improvements, and that would be 300 North, essentially extending from 52 to 39. Whit Road, heading from 300 North essentially to the southern border of the Eli Lilly site, and then also 375 from Eli Lilly site over to State Road 39 North. Additionally, 450 North, the segment from 39 to Whit Road is being evaluated, and then Whit Road heading north from Eli Lilly site northbound up to State Road 37 is also being evaluated to determine, again, looking at the overall traffic counts, what sort of road cross-section would be necessary to accommodate those counts. You're essentially looking at the minimum would be a two-lane road cross-section of minimum width as required by the City of Lebanon road standards, and then looking at if the traffic warrants it, whether there's turn lanes that are warranted, whether additional through lane of traffic are warranted. And so those are the discussions that are happening right now. And I know Kevin has provided you guys with a pretty lengthy evaluation of some of those traffic studies and looked at the road segments and intersections that he believes need to be evaluated in order to determine what needs to happen in this area. So in addition to the road segments that are looking at the cross sections, you also have all the intersections. So again, at the intersections, then you have, okay, the additional traffic. How many turn lanes do we need? How many through lanes do we need? Does it require a signal? Does it require something additional? So that's what's happening with what I've highlighted in yellow here is, and actually I think there's actually more intersections as Kevin's got on his list. I've highlighted the ones that are primarily adjacent to the Lilly site. So you're essentially looking at every major intersection along 300 North. The intersections that would be 375 and State Road 39, again, that as they talked about, their truck access will be from 39 to 375, so there's going to be truck movements that happen here, looking at what turn lanes or signals might be required here, and then also looking at the north area of the site and looking at what may need to happen at Whit and 47, and then at 47 and 39. And again, those traffic studies are evaluating those to determine what improvements might be necessary based on traffic. The big circle that you see here in yellow is representative generally of the new interchange that NDOT is evaluating at the present time. I've put it at 300 North. But I'll show you here in a second that the location of it has not been determined yet. That's something actually that Federal Highway determines. And so that's a process that's still ongoing. So I've just kind of shown this generally to show you that there is evaluation being done for an interchange in that area, either north at 300 or north or south of that area, to determine the best location with the least amount of impacts to the surrounding area, because there is quite a bit of floodplain to the south, and then also homes in the area 300 North. So NDOT has provided that evaluation to Federal Highway, or soon will. but then Federal Highway makes the decision on the final outcome of that. So this is kind of generally showing that. So that's the intersections, and what I've shown in green here is actually the railroad crossings. And in addition to the intersection, they're also looking at those railroad crossings to determine what sort of improvements. Again, as you know, that there's no crossing signals at some of those intersections. So again, looking at the traffic counts, determining whether it's just signal improvements and crossing improvements, whether there needs to be a grade separation so that the road goes over the railroad. I know that's one of the things that's being determined at 300 North. 300 North is going to be the primary arterial on the north side of town here, the east-west corridor. So depending on what those traffic counts look like, there's a discussion about whether that road will have to be a bridge over the railroad. And again, we talked a little bit before about how the rail cars will access the site. They'll be coming southbound and then backing up into Lilly site. So the two crossings that would be affected are the two that I've highlighted here in green, potentially. Certainly if even if it's a short one, the 375 crossing would be impacted while they're swapping out rail cars. If it's a long train, it's potential that the 300 North area could be impacted. So that's something that is definitely part of that traffic study to look at what sort of improvements might be necessary at those two rail crossings. Let's see what I've got here. A quick highlight, and again, I know the applicant is going to be going through some of this. Oops, got a little too small now. So this, again, just kind of highlights for you in terms of consideration. This kind of shows you the classifications for each one of the road segments. Looking at 300 North as a major east-west corridor, or also in terms of our classification as an arterial. And looking at, so the Whit Road segment is identified, I think it says as a minor truck route, an urban cross-section. And then as you're heading eastbound, then it becomes a minor truck route that's a rural cross-section. So this kind of gives you an idea in terms of the classifications of the major roadways. And I'll go through this quick again because I know the applicant's going to go through this in additional detail. So this shows you a cross-section of what that major east-west corridor might look like. And this is showing here a boulevard with 2 lanes in both eastbound and westbound, and accommodations for turn lanes where turn lanes might be required, showing the sidewalks and/or paths on both sides of the road. So this kind of gives you a general idea of what's being considered in terms of the classification for that road, and certainly they'll have to develop the plans on exactly what the improvements would look like on 300 North, but this just gives you an idea of the classification of the road cross-section that they're being proposed there that's based on the traffic projections that they're seeing in the traffic impact study. Here would be the minor truck route, and this is Whit Road heading northbound to Lilly site. Again, it's a boulevard cross-section, but it's a 1-lane either direction cross-section rather than the 2 lanes that show on 300 North. So again, a very similar cross-section, but it's just 1 lane either direction rather than 2. And then looking at the rural cross-section, which this would address 375 as it's heading eastbound from the site. Again, you're looking at accommodations for, and this would actually be 375 adjacent to Lilly's property, so still west of the railroad tracks. So again, it shows for accommodation for turn lanes. This would be, again, getting into that the truck access and also the fire station as you're on that southern property line here. Again, looking at pathways along that road, and that cross-section is being proposed there based on the traffic counts. And then the minor road cross-section, this would be 375 once you get east of the railroad tracks, and then Whit Road as you're going north up to State Road 47. It's a more minor road cross-section. Again, additional width to make sure we've got proper lane widths with shoulders, and then ditches for drainage. And then I guess this is showing a multi-use path, but I don't think there's a path proposed on Whit Road heading north. So again, this is just kind of showing you the cross-section being proposed. Again, all based on that traffic study. So if the road were to be closed, existing traffic were dispersed to the around this area, what would that do to the system? But then also that traffic study then does look at those future traffic counts as this area develops out and says, okay, existing traffic and future traffic, what would need to be done to those road segments to accommodate that traffic? And that's what these concepts in terms of the road cross-section would do, is make sure that all of that, the traffic counts are accommodated on those road segments. And again, I mentioned I don't have all of the recommendations just yet, but on each of those intersections that I highlighted, there will be improvements that will be necessary there. The primary ones are at 300 and Whit, because that's going to be the primary entrance for both employee and visitors. So there'll be significant improvements at 300 and Whit. Because it's a truck route, at 339 there again are going to be significant improvements. My understanding that's likely going to be a signalized intersection with turn lanes to accommodate that. So again, significant improvements there. And then the same thing at 375 for trucks that will be turning left to go to Lilly's site. Those are the primary ones, but but again, Kevin's got a longer list of intersections. I'll maybe call on him here in a second just to give you a few highlights of his analysis as well. And this, again, I think a lot of people have already seen this. This is the alternatives map for the interchange. Again, this is still something to be determined on the exact outcome of this. Federal Highway will determine, but this kind of gives you a rough idea. The one in red that you see here would be putting the interchange at 300 North, and then you've got some alternatives that would be to the north of 300, just north, and then maybe about a quarter-mile north of 300, and then there's one that actually would be actually up in the southern part of Lilly's site here. And I think, let's see, is the map actually going to scroll? I thought it was going to freeze up on me. And again, some additional alternatives to the south that show here. So again, as I mentioned, this is not, the outcome's not determined yet, but again, as we're looking at alternatives to get around the site, to the far west of it, you have US 52 would be the major north-south road. With the interchange access that we provided, then Interstate 65 would become a potential north-south route. And then to the east end, you would have State Road 39. In terms of how to direct the volume of traffic to adjacent roadways. Certainly one of the additional considerations is not just, and this will be the last thing I'll kind of touch on for you here real quick before we ask the applicant to come out, is in addition to the volume of traffic, it's the type of traffic that makes up that volume. So a major part of that is going to be vehicular traffic. A portion of that will be truck traffic. And then one part of this, of the traffic volume that will be unique to this area for a period of time will be the fact that this is still an agricultural area. So we have to make sure, in addition to just the volume of traffic, we have to look at the types of traffic that need to use this area as well and what routes they take. And we have had some conversation with adjoining neighbors about what that looks like and what routes they use. And I think just to go over some of the concerns that have been expressed to us that we've heard, and I'm sure we'll hear more tonight. We've heard some concerns, but I'm sure there are more, is the routes that ag traffic needs to use. Again, those are slow-moving vehicles. So the routes, as I talked about right now, the north-south corridors are 52, 65, and 39. Those are all higher speed corridors and higher volume corridors. So while ag traffic in some cases has to use those corridors because that's the only route, they try to avoid those routes as much as possible. So in terms of looking at the impacts by closing the road, I think that's one of the most significant impacts we need to discuss tonight. I'd be happy to discuss that with the Plan Commission is how we address that segment of the volume of traffic, knowing that the impacts to them are that, because if that road were to close, we're essentially pushing them to higher volume, higher traffic corridors or higher speed corridors. And so while I don't have a specific solution there, I do know that that's a concern that's been raised, and so we want to make sure that there's discussion of that tonight with the Plan Commission and certainly with the applicant. And so that's a real quick, I say quick, I could have gone in a lot more detail overview. But Kevin, is there anything that you wanted to address in terms of your letter you put together evaluating the traffic studies?
The only thing I would add is you mentioned a couple of times that I had more intersections. I'm requiring the study and the traffic modeling of all traffic between 65 on the west side, 39 on the east side, 300 north, and 47. So every road segment, every intersection, require those to be studied in the existing condition, in the proposed conditions, and any inadequacies regarding service, regarding that capacity increase, they would have to accommodate those increases and mitigate those increases with those off-site traffic and transportation improvements. Whatever the data says it will be, whether it's widening or roundabouts or intersections or signals, we will evaluate that as the model is prepared. But we are looking at all of those impacts and making sure. Ben's right, though, as a side note, those intersections will need to be designed to accommodate agricultural implement travel. It's a standard practice when we do any road, especially in a community like this. For example, you might have ever driven down Indianapolis Avenue and wondered why there are bike lanes and grade separated trails. Well, the bike lanes are so that we can provide 4 more feet of pavement to allow for the delivery of farm implements to what used to be Reynolds Farm Equipment near the REMC site. So that is the common design requirement in any new road project, that we design for a design vehicle. The design vehicle is the largest vehicle that will not impede traffic, but then we also take a second look at it and design for every vehicle that may come through an intersection. That's all I'll add. I don't want to get too far in the weeds.
Do you want to talk a little bit about when you expect to see commitments on those versus conceptual plans versus construction plans?
Yeah, that's a good point. So what we've laid out for the IEDC and Pure Development, their development partners, as well as Lilly, is that we need to see commitments. We need to see a draft level of that traffic study and commitments related to those off-site improvements, written commitments, prior to any engineering department support associated with the vacation. Again, reminding you the procedure, tonight we're just talking about forwarding that vacation application to the council for their consideration. It wouldn't be up for a vote till, at the earliest, would be the February 13th meeting. So before we would be taking a vote, it's my recommendation that those commitments would need to be made and be made in writing before any vacation should be considered. Did I cover it, Ben? I don't know if there's a second part of your question.
Yeah, I'd say you talked a little bit about scheduling in terms of conceptual plans.
Oh, yes. So that is to get us to the vacation action by the council. And then we've also, basically instructed the whole development side team that we wouldn't be issuing any permits on the Lilly site until we had the vacation approved, and then afterwards, preliminary plans and commitments on schedules and schedule scenarios, phasing plans, if you will, for those required improvements. So once those have been issued, then we could issue building permits that would most likely be later this spring for earthwork and foundation releases. And then they would then continue working, and before the end of the year, we would need full construction documents and on those commitments as well, so that we can continue to review and evaluate those things. So try to lay out a schedule that gets us all comfortable with the improvements that are going to be needed to mitigate impacts. And so far, we've heard nothing but willingness and agreement from the applicants to make sure those things happen for us.
Kevin, do part of these commitments have to come from NDOT regarding 39 and 47? I know we can get there, but...
Yeah, and my requirement on the traffic study includes all those intersections on 39 and 47 as well. I think that's a separate level there. So we've heard from NDOT that they're already planning, aside from that this project was coming, they were already planning to upgrade the 47 and 39 intersection. I know it seems odd because they just added a signal, but there's already a project in the works from NDOT to improve that intersection. We've also notified them through all these various channels and various participants that may not be enough. So before they make a decision to let a project up there, we'd like these traffic studies done so that can color their decisions that they're making. The interchange decision is a little more complicated. Obviously, as Ben said, that's a federal highway level decision. And I don't think it's till next month that NDOT makes their recommendation to Federal Highway, and then they begin evaluating that and making their decision. So all this is somewhat a moving target as the interchange location is yet to be determined. So when I say, and when Ben says interchanges at 300 or improvements to 300, we're talking about wherever the major east-west corridor is that would be at 300 or some new location.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Yeah.
I had a question. This may be thinking a step or two ahead, but if we're talking construction traffic and the amount of heavy equipment that would be coming through, are the roads out there capable of that already?
No, they're not, in my opinion. They're not adequate. I'm not for sure at what point these roads were turned from gravel roads into their current condition, but, these are not sort of highway grade specifications on pavements. So I didn't even touch on that. Other commitments that we've asked to be made would be the maintenance of all roads in that zone from 47 to 300 to 39 to 65, that the maintenance of all those roads during this time period is something the county has also asked for, that be performed by the developer. So if the road has any problems, if there are potholes that develop, things of that nature, that those roads would need to be maintained by the developer. We also understand that preliminary phasing for those off-site improvements would include the widening of the widening of Whit Road north, all the way to 47. And that would be widening and reconstruction, fortification of that road, that entire corridor. And that is scheduled to be the primary construction entrance for the development. So for this year, really access would be on existing roads. I think the plan is, and that's to be finalized, as I said, that north section of Whit Road would start reconstruction sometime this year. And then this year, from the Lilly standpoint, is primarily earthwork and foundations. As you get into next year and beyond, that's when things start getting more complex and more vertical. And by then, Whit Road North would be completed, and that would be the primary access road for construction traffic, while they then reconstruct 375 and Whit Road South and 300 in the
Would Whit Road
interchange.
North be constructed to its final
Yes,
grade where it's supposed to be? Okay.
yes. So yeah, all that is part of those commitments of maintenance responsibilities, scheduling, phasing. That's all part of the request that the engineering department has made, subject to any approvals that would be forthcoming on the vacation. Enough?
Any other questions for Kevin or I? Clear as mud.
Yeah.
Very good. I'll turn it over to the applicant. Ken, you want me to pull up your slides? Okay.
Thank you. Apologize for jumping the gun on the sequence.
Should have made notes.
My purpose and part of this is just to talk about the law as it relates to the vacation of this public road, the criteria that the state statute requires be addressed, the grounds that you folks have to decide in making your recommendation. Ultimately, as Ben pointed out, decision is a legislative decision made by the Common Council, but you have an important recommendation that plays a role in this process. This is a public hearing tonight, and as we've been through these before, a number of people have chosen to speak. I just wanted to remind you folks that people in the audience may have other thoughts of things they want to talk about, but this, from my perspective, is not a debate tonight about the importance of farming or the agricultural interests of our community, state, or country. It's not a reconsideration of the council's approval of this annexation or the assignment of general industrial zoning to this site. The terms and conditions on which Eli Lilly may be able to develop this property are going to have to play out, and that's not going to be decided tonight. It's not a referendum on Indiana's laws concerning municipal annexation or land development or road closings. It's not a discussion about the impacts pro or con from development in general or our interstate corridor in particular. It's not an investigation into the environmental impact of the proposed Lilly campus or the business activities that will go on there. It's not a conversation about whose individual or collective rights should take priority when it comes to the establishment or improvement or vacation of public roads in our city. We're here tonight to present information about this project. I represent the IEDC. Folks from Lilly are here to talk about their plans. Because there's a public road that completely bisects the middle of this corporate campus. And we ask that portion of the public road be eliminated. We have the legal right to make that request. We recognize it's a legislative decision of city government. Every one of these decisions is to be decided on its own facts and circumstances. You folks have been on the Plan Commission for a while, know this happens fairly often. You've had several vacation petitions filed over the years, and each one stands on its own merits. We respectfully submit that the vacation of this section of Whit Road is in the public interest and the economic interest of the city. It satisfies all the legal requirements and criteria for vacation. The 3/4 mile section of Whit Road, which is proposed to be vacated, represents less than 0.7% of the roughly 107 miles of public roads in our city. The IEDC is the only owner of the land within the area proposed for the Lilly campus, and it's the only owner of land that abuts the portion of roadway that's to be vacated. In fact, IEDC owns or controls all land on both sides of Whit Road from 300 north all the way to 450 north between the interstate and the railroad tracks along the east side. No one else owns any land adjacent to this roadway proposed to be vacated. No one else needs to have use of this section of road to gain access to their property or to anyone else's property. Now, we've talked about the location of the Lilly campus, and I won't talk about where that is exactly, but the vacated area of this roadway will allow for the cohesive development of this property, which will include 30 acres or 40 acres of retention ponds to provide for necessary storm drainage and add to the aesthetic beauty and character of the district. The vacation of this portion of Whit Road will allow for the proper siting of buildings to have larger buffering than they would otherwise have if the road had to remain. In fact, plans being developed call for the buildings to be set back hundreds of feet farther from public roadways and boundaries than is required by our ordinance. The vacation will not interfere with the current flow of traffic. Traffic study demonstrates that the Whit Road receives a minimal amount of traffic currently, between 375 and 450, and those studies were done at a time when there were many people living on Whit Road, and they no longer live on Whit Road, so the numbers today would be less than they were at the time the studies were done. We believe vacation of this portion of the road will not materially change the circumstances of other landowners or negatively impact the traffic flows and patterns in the city. Reasonable alternative routes are available, including routes that avoid motorists from being required to drive on high-speed roads if they desire. Vacation will not hinder the access to churches, schools, or other public buildings or any residential neighborhoods. That's criteria of the vacation statute. Now, vacation of this section of roadway is a prerequisite for Lilly to develop its 600-acre campus. Lilly performed a global assessment to determine the best potential locations for this campus and the operations to be performed there, and they chose Lebanon, Indiana. Lilly identified a need for a single site made up of 600 acres for combined industrial operations that's secure and connected. Why does it have to be secure? Because it's committed to manufacturing essential medicines that meet high expectations of safety, quality, and environmental stewardship. This requires a safe environment for all employees and the surrounding community. It requires 24/7 security at all entrances to check IDs and clear industrial passage in and out of the campus. It simply can't work if we have a public roadway running right through the middle of it. Why does it have to be an interconnected single site? This enables Lilly to internalize significant portions of the activities that will be going on there, control the vehicular movements to its own site, and reduce vehicles from using surrounding roads. Whit Road to the south, Whit Road to the north, 375, 450, which, by the way, will be substantially improved by this development. We are proposing to vacate a 3/4 mile section of Whit Road. We are improving almost 3 miles of adjacent neighboring property, public roadways. The vacation will allow for a more seamless operation uninterrupted by public movement and traffic. They've utilized a thoughtful campus design, providing the ability to safely manage all on-site vehicles and pedestrians. It provides a means to bring manufacturing's best practices to building design and facility layouts that enhance productivity and good science. It creates and allows for operational efficiencies that allow Lilly to manage its environmental footprint in areas of energy efficiency, waste minimization, and water production. Why the speed of doing this? Well, state law says if you file a petition to vacate a road, you have to have a public hearing before the city council within 30 days. We have to follow the state law. We have to meet the timeline. We've got to know if we can get this road vacated. If we can't get this road vacated, there's a totally different animal here, maybe the end of the line. So we've got to get that process done. Development plan goes follows. Platting occurs. We just have to follow the legal significance. At this point, I'd like to call on Michael Watts to talk about the road improvements that are proposed for the neighboring property. Michael is a professional engineer working for Pure Development, which is a partner with the IEDC in this project. Michael, come on forward.
Michael Watts, Pure Development, Indianapolis, Indiana. I appreciate Ben kind of stepping through some of those preliminary slides showing some of the improvements that are proposed around the Lilly site. And I'd like to just expand on what he said and kind of give him more detail, what some of these improvements will include, talk through a little bit on the construction side, how that traffic's going to be managed as well. And what has been done to date to look at not only the traffic side, but what the improvement side as well, what design's been done to date. So before I dig into this in a little bit more detail, I just want to point out, and Kevin touched on this, with Federal Highway running the process for where that interchange will go, the improvements there, and including whether it's 300 or whatever road ends up tying back into Whit Road, that's part of the Federal Highway process. That's outside of our control. So I'm going to focus more on the local roads and what improvements will be made there. And also, before I dive into what these road sections look like and what improvements will be made, I just want to point out as well that these are proposed road sections. It's based upon right-of-ways that we're proposing to meet both city and county standards. It's based upon willing sellers of that right-of-way, and we're going through the process of acquiring that right-of-way. So all of this is proposed at this point. As Ben mentioned, the primary entrance to the Lilly site will be South Whit Road, tying into whether that's 300 or whatever that new road will be coming off the interchange. Because this is the main corridor into the Lilly site, we wanted to go beyond what a typical city road would look like. That's where the boulevard corridor comes from. It's one lane in either direction with a center median. What that center median allows for is, as development expands south of Lilly, you can cut that median, put in turn lanes to allow for free-flowing traffic either way. With that right-of-way section of up to 120 feet, it also allows for future turn lanes, A-cell, D-cell lanes, things like that. So it allows for easy expansion if future development occurs south of the Lilly site. What we did when we looked at the traffic study, and Kevin mentioned a study that was done in fall of this past year, we took Lilly's proposed operational traffic and we applied that to what the existing traffic counts were. We went out and did traffic counts for a number of interchanges and intersections and roads in this area. We applied Lilly's operational traffic to the existing traffic to take a look and make sure all of these road sections operated at a level of C or higher, which is one of the commitments that Kevin has asked for this development. And with the road sections that I'm showing, all of them do operate at a level of C or higher. Now, Kevin has asked us to look at a little bit higher future traffic, so that's part of that secondary traffic study that's currently going on, and also the expansion of what interchanges we're looking at. Beyond just the traffic, the one lane of traffic either way along South Whit Road, we're proposing multi-use path on one side and a walking path on the other, so it creates interconnectability south into Lebanon. As Whit Road turns and goes east along 375, it maintains almost the exact same road section. It'll be one lane in either direction with a center median, again allowing for us to add in future turn lanes. This will be non-curb, unlike the section on South Whit Road, because this section is going to see more truck traffic. So we'll have paved shoulders, that allows for better free flow of traffic with additional trucks, and then also continuing that multi-use path along 375 east towards 39. North Whit Road, Kevin mentioned this is going to be the first section constructed. The reason for this is with Lilly ramping up construction traffic heading into 24, it will become the main construction entrance to their site. So we want to try and get that section of road done as quickly as possible. The idea being that we're starting construction this summer and getting it substantially complete by the end of the year. This road section, because it's going to see a lot of construction traffic, the existing roadway is narrow. I think they're 8 to 10 foot wide lanes each direction. We'll expand that to 11-foot lanes with paved shoulders. There's also weight-limited culverts along North Whit Road as well, so those will be upgraded to allow for heavier truck traffic. This section will also be carried from the rail line on 375 east over to 39 as well. Again, there's some weight-limited structures underneath that existing section of road as well that'll get upgraded to allow for the future construction traffic. And then the final section that I'll talk about today is 450 North. The idea of the improvements to 450 North, we don't see 450 North being used at all for any sort of operational traffic or construction traffic. We just want to upgrade it since it's currently a 2-lane gravel road. We want to pave it and improve it for free flow of traffic for surrounding property owners. And then I'll just quickly touch on construction phasing of all of this. In reality, Lilly's operational traffic is quite a bit less than what construction traffic will be. And so the state's commitment is to allow for multiple, at least two paths of ingress and egress for Lilly from start to finish of construction. So with that, North Whit Road will be the priority to get that complete, along with 375. Those will then become the main entrance and exit points for construction traffic as the new interchange construction gets going, and if 300 gets shut down for any period of time or anything like that, it allows for already improved road sections along 375 and North Whit Road for any sort of construction traffic. That's all I got.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the commission for him or the IDC? None? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Ben, do you have anything else to add, or Kent, maybe?
No, sir, that's all the information we have tonight in support of the vacation petition.
Thank you, we appreciate
We
it.
are happy to answer questions after the public has had their opportunity to comment.
Okay, thank you. Public hearing, okay. At this time, we will open the public hearing on docket 23-02 regarding the vacation of 3/4 of a mile of Whit Road. Make sure you're signed in, come to the podium, state your name and your address, and try to stay within 3 minutes, please.
Excuse me. My name is Karen Metzger. Our address is 4820 North, 150 West. Our farm borders the north side of the new Eli Lilly proposal. I'm 80 plus, which has nothing to do with anything, but I'm here and I have lived in this same neighborhood practically all my life. I remember when Whit Road was a up and down, hilly, narrow gravel road when we'd ride to town with my parents. And so I've seen it go from just a narrow road to what the road is today. And I expect that in the future, it will continue to be upgraded. Today, as in days past, the traffic has increased. Many are from the county that have used this road for years and years. Some use the road to go across to 52 on 300, which is a better trip for them to the interstate, since the interstate is under construction, has been, and probably will be for a while. It's dangerous for them. It is also dangerous for farm equipment. This morning, in fact, I came from Frankfurt home, and a combine turned from 39 to go west on 47. It got to road 150 before it could pull off. There are mailboxes and other such obstructions that big farm equipment cannot pull off the highways. I can foresee that in the near future, there will be more large farm equipment going down 39 and 47. They will not be able to pull off so that others can go around them. They will, in fact, probably cause some people to become impatient and therefore cause more accidents. Presently, I'm not going by my notes, so if I forget and mess things up, okay. Presently, when there is an accident on 465, it normally happens between State Road 47 and the interchange that goes across to 52. So that road is often jammed up with traffic. They come off at 47, go over to 39, or they come down Whit Road. I would say, in my estimation, as I've seen this, that the traffic is almost as equal on 39 as it is on 150. How is the city of Lebanon going to put up or control or see all of this added traffic through town? I think that is probably a big problem. You've already discussed this evening the interchanges that I have in my notes. One interchange that you did not address was the interchange at US 52 and 47, which is the Dairy Queen corner. There are no turn lanes for State Road 47. Yes, there are for 52, but there are none for 47. So that corner also needs to be addressed. To pull out from Whit Road onto 47, you've addressed that, and you don't know what's going to happen there because it's a state road.
Thank you,
But-
your time's up.
It's up? Okay.
Yeah, 3 minutes, thank you.
Okay, fine. May I say one final thing?
Yes.
I won't keep you. The 4 things I have are, wait until the present I-65 construction is completed so that there is an alternative route. 450 North is paved from 150 Whit Road to 39. It is now gravel, so that was addressed. Turn lanes at stoplights. Closer to the Lilly plant completion date would be a better great date of vacating the road. I thank you for all of your attention, and I'm sorry, I'm nervous, but I haven't done this for a very long time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen.
Hello, Britt Reese, 6519 North, 350 West, Thorntown, Indiana. So I've got 2 questions tonight. So the first one is, Boone County has a thoroughfare plan. So has there been a review of this plan, and has there been collaboration with Area Plan? Which leads me to my second question and point. So if you look at the Exhibit F, Grasslands Connector Road Improvement Plan, there are 5 proposals. I'm going to talk about those. Proposal A. So we're looking at Whit Road, the north part of Whit Road. That's 100% county on the west, 100% county on the east. That's county road. It's not Lilly's, not IDC's, not Lebanon's. Proposal B, again, 100% county road. So go back, that was 1.5 miles for Whit on the north, 0.5 mile for proposal D, or B. For proposed C, so this is the piece right there at the south side of Lilly. So part of that is county on one side, but I'll give it to you. That's 0.5 mile. Proposed detail D. So that is, let's see here, that is the south part of Whit Road. And so that is about 3/4 of a mile long. And so about 0.5 mile of that is county, both sides of the road, left and right. So this doesn't include 300, and surprise, surprise, a lot of 300, also a county road, county property, county residents on both sides. So of the total improvements in this plan, which are 4.25 miles, 3 of those miles are actually county roads. So that's over 70% of those roads are county roads, not city roads, not part of the annexation. So it's pretty clear that this actually falls under the jurisdiction and should not be decided by the city of Lebanon, especially if you're taking into consideration these improvements that they're talking about. The improvement proposals are calling for massive right-of-ways. If you reference the map, you'll see that the proposed improvements run through people's properties and in some cases, people's houses. So these are county residents, not Lebanon residents. So I'm sure, we all know our county officials, some are here tonight, would not approve of this, because again, county residents. So leaving it short tonight, but I challenge you, I want you to reflect on whether you actually have the right to make these decisions that are affecting county residents, because this is in county jurisdiction. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, my name is Jeremy Brown. I'm 4861 North 150 West, actually right across from Karen. So I understand everything, Britt, you said, and that's great, and I totally get it. They're county roads, so it is tough for the city. If the question tonight is should the road be vacated, sorry, I haven't talked in 2 hours, which is a lot for me. If the road should be vacated, I think the road should be vacated, and the only reason I say that is I live just north of it. If we're really gonna be doing some crazy shit there with chemicals and biopharma and all this stuff, I don't want big trucks going up and down that area, messing it up, getting traffic accidents, everything else. So my 2 cents is, if they're gonna, I don't really want Lilly there, to be honest with you, but if they're gonna be there, I want them to be encapsulated, have their own fire department, mess with their own stuff. That's just my opinion.
Thank you.
So my name is Jim Love. I live at 3150 North State Road 52, Lebanon, Indiana. And what I want to visit with you folks tonight, first of all, what I'd like to do is I'd like to thank all the people in the room that took time out of your schedules tonight to come out to this and prove how important this is to the people of Boone County. So thank you very much. You're the most important people in the room. But the question I want to know is, why do we allow someone to close a road simply because they want to? Lots of farmers would have dug roads out if they could have dug roads out, because farming around those can be kind of a pain in the neck. Whit Road predates anybody in this room. As Karen told us, it's been a road for a long time. There's houses built in the 1800s on that road. So when you think about that standpoint, why does anybody in this room have the authority to give Whit Road away? It was given to us. Our forefathers gave it to us. They laid it out. They put it out there so that we would have some place to make transportation for our families and for people in the community. So for us to give it away because Eli Lilly finds it inconvenient that their 600 acres that they purchased has a road in the middle of it, perhaps they should have beat Hinkey to the punch and bought the 600 acres that Eugene Smith used to own. It was 600 acres contiguous, but they didn't get there fast enough. So who uses Whit Road? Let's think about this for instance. Some of you may not even know where Whit Road is. It starts at Lafayette Avenue and it goes all the way to darn near to the Berg. It's a great opportunity to get up to the road without having to get on the high-speed traffic road. It's homeowners, it's cyclists, students trying to learn to drive, it's emergency vehicles that are trying to get around a problem, and it's agriculture. There's a lot of people that use Whit Road because Whit Road is a safe haven and keeps us out of places where we could hurt others or others could hurt us. Most of the traffic are using that road as a slow route because you can pull a hay wagon down and you can do lots of things. Now, if you force the traffic, which is what your plan proposes, 239, what you've done is you've done exactly the same problem Lebanon has. So congratulations, we've done the same thing that the forefathers did by forcing every darn road in Lebanon back to Lebanon Street, and everybody gripes about that nonstop, do they not? That Lebanon Street is a congested mess, and it's because you can't get north to south. You're going to do the same darn thing north of town when you take out Whit Road by forcing people back to 39. So it's dangerous, and it is very unnecessary. Do you guys remember who this gentleman is right here? Anybody? Anybody? This is Bobby Highsong. Bobby Highsong was a resident, he was a farmer, he was a friend, he was a son, and he was an all-around good guy. But Bobby Highsong's dead. And the reason Bobby Highsong's dead is because he had a tractor and he was having to run up and down a state highway. State highways are not safe places for tractors. So closing a road just because it crosses Lilly's facility that unnecessarily will put those same people out on 39 is dangerous and unnecessary. And I would extend the opportunity to any of you on the board, if you would like to come ride the tractor up and down 39 tomorrow, I will move it over there for you. Bring a pair of shorts, spare, because it's a harrowing adventure. And you can ride that tractor up and down the road, and if you get tired of that one, we'll go over to 52, where the people that try to kill you on that road are usually from out of state. But it is not easy, and that's why oftentimes you will find us moving that equipment up and down Whit Road, because it is much easier and is much safer. Safety should be your paramount thought when you're looking at what we're going to do with this road. Lilly wants, if they want this, guess what? They'll want something else. And if they're going to hold you hostage over this today, what are they going to hold you hostage over next that they want done that you guys don't necessarily think is a good idea? And right now, I don't think anything short of relocating Whit Road on their site is a good option. Move it west of them, 300 feet, 400 feet, 500 feet, bend it out through their amenities area and their jogging trails, and leave the road in, fence it high on both sides. We'll pass through, we won't even look to see what they're doing.
Just 3 minutes.
So keep that in mind. We'd like for this to be a safe place to coexist. We're not here to fight whether Lilly's plot plan is worth a darn or not, but we are here to fight over making sure that our families are safe when they travel.
Thank you, Jim.
Just a quick point, northwestern Boone County was actually land of the Indians before our forefathers. You're welcome.
Brian Daggy, 2005 West 250 North of Lebanon. I'm here to speak for the Boone County Farm Bureau Incorporated Board. We're left with many of the thoughts that you've heard here tonight. Our primary concern is safety, as you've heard. Whit Road is a major thoroughfare for farm implements, and as Mr. Love talks about, it's not much fun going down 39 or 52 when you could get over to a county road, an excellent county road, and use that as a safe haven to go down the road and not have to contend with high-speed traffic. Our concern is also with fire and safety, ambulance times. Some of the alternative routes have not been improved yet, so there's going to be some issues there that I don't think have been addressed. We believe that Whit Road should be left alone or a suitable alternative proposed, either relocate it over further west on Lloyd's property or some other alternative that does not throw farm traffic out onto a state highway 52 or 65, 39. In addition, with all of the comments on having to make road improvements, county road property involved, the decisions on the 65 interchange, it seems like all of this is premature until some of those questions have either been addressed and answered, or you've brought in the other people involved with it to make the decision in a joint fashion. From my perspective, I understand what Mr. Franson was talking about for the reasons you want to vacate a road, but I believe safety trumps the economic reasons that he cited. And I would ask you to consider that very strongly tonight and not let the fact that they've made a poor site decision with a road running through it now be your problem to solve. That shouldn't have occurred to begin with. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Ryan Merrill, Thorntown. I've been hit twice on 52. Me and my wife have both been hit, and in an accident, we're both living. And I don't think you need to shut up a damn road either.
Thank you.
Kevin Garst, 7652 North US 52. As I said, my name's Kevin Garst. I have the privilege of representing my family here tonight. On the morning of May 15, 2018, I had breakfast with my father. That was the last time I ever got to speak with him. On that day specifically, he took care of my grandma. He did all the work he normally does, helped a stranded motorist change their tire, and decided to drive a tractor from there to his place so he could mow hay. He was hit from behind by a box truck, split the tractor in half. He died from his injuries 2 days after his 66th birthday. He'd done nothing wrong. He was in a big orange tractor with flashing lights. He had an SMV sign. He was on flat ground on 52. You could go around him. He was hit from behind, killed. Nothing he could have done. That was May 2018. That was 4 years ago. Traffic has done nothing but got worse since then. With the construction and development coming, it's just going to keep getting worse. We need roads like 150 or Whit Road to provide relief. The road was there long before Lilly's bought the property, as well as the farming community who use it. There are several farmers who own both sides of the road, and obviously they're not trying to plow it under for higher yields. By closing 150, slow-moving vehicles will be forced to commute on busy highways. Like I said, my dad was killed on 52, which has passing lanes. 47 and 39 do not. It will be more dangerous, or at the very least, more likely to cause traffic jams and accidents. I feel like closing down this section of road, you're showing a lack of care for the community that you wish to build and operate in. I hope what I've said will help you, I urge a negative recommendation on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick LaFollette, 11333 West State Road 32. I live right along the highway out there. State Road 32 is a very busy road, same as State Road 39 out here. September 23rd of 2003, my dad was heading west on the road when the semi plowed in the back of his tractor. Demolished the tractor, he was ejected from the cab. Didn't kill him outright, The paramedics called in for the Lifeline helicopter out of Indianapolis. In the process of doing that, State Road 32 had to be totally closed. Traffic was backed up for miles both directions. Dad eventually died before they could even load him on the Lifeline. Something like that could happen out here if you've got extra traffic on 39. If it were to happen out here in a certain area near the Lilly complex and 39 is closed, think what a nightmare the traffic here in town would be. I'm sure you already know how bad it is already when there's a backup out on 65. Traffic can be a real nightmare through town. If you had 39 blocked off like that, it would be gridlock in this town. Something else after watching the presentation tonight that I noticed was they're putting in a rail spur for the Lilly complex, meaning there's going to be more rail traffic along the county road there, which means it's going to be blocked different times. A lot of emergency vehicles need to get through. It takes a long time to get a train moving. And then you also have the possibility of derailment. I'm a bit of a rail buff, so derailments happen far more than you ever hear about. I just hope that you would take this very seriously and consider what a mistake it would be to close off that section of Whit Road. I've personally used it many times, even though I don't live in that part of the county. And I know what a convenience it is for people trying to get through, and blocking that off if 39's made unavailable would mean that people that are used to going through there to get around anything like that would no longer have that. It would cause the gridlock that I mentioned. One final thing I'd like to say to you, ladies and gentlemen of the board, I found it very surprising when Mr. Franson made the comment that if you don't do Lily's bidding, they may pick up their marbles and walk away. That seemed like a bit of intimidation to me.
Is there any more public comment? Okay.
Wanda Garst, 6446 West, 400 North, Thorntown. You heard from my son. I've already lost my husband because of traffic. People being stupid on the roads. I brought a map, and I'm sorry, I made it roughly this morning, and if you don't mind, I'll come closer.
You can show it on the, if you lay it there, they can show it on the
Put
screen.
it on this.
If you want to, or you can show us.
Yeah.
Flip like this. Can turn it on. There we go.
So here's where I live. Currently, I come over to 52. I come down 1 mile, cross on 300, go up 150, where I have a farm there that I have farming operations on 150, over on 500, cross 39 over 500 again, and up here to 300 East. Closing 150, you're going to force me to either go 47 or 39 with my tractors moving 18 miles an hour. How would you like to sit behind me for 8 miles going across 47 at 18 miles an hour? Last time I did that with a baler on, I was almost hit and killed, and my daughter was following behind me in a truck and was missed by inches. Don't close 150 just to appease a billion-dollar business. There's all of us farmers out here are billion-dollar business as well. They knew when they bought that property that it was a public road there, and just because somebody said, oh, we can close that for you, don't mean you have to do it.
Thank you, Wanda. Is there any other public comment?
I'm Kim Love, 3150 North State Road 52. My first question is when do the people that live here, that have made this county what it is, when do their needs come first? Because so far they have not. This fall, a gentleman was killed on 52 trying to move an excavator across to his farmland to clear fence rows. So this Christmas, his 2 children, his 5 grandchildren and his 9 great-grandchildren did not have him at Christmas. They won't ever have him again. These roads that allow farmers to move slow-moving equipment and wide equipment down some safe way are extremely important. You need to think of the people you're supposed to be serving. You are supposed to represent the city of Lebanon and the property owners here, not the property owners that are wanting to come. Eli Lilly, welcome to Lebanon. We're not 100% sure we want you here, but we will welcome you anyway. I would highly suggest that since you first started looking at that site, the IEDC has gotten a hold of quite a bit of other ground in our area, 5,500 more acres in our area. There are many areas in that new area that has been annexed into the city of Lebanon that are contiguous, that have thousands of acres in them with no roads through it. Perhaps you should consider moving your possible new plant to one of our other areas inside our LEAP district that will not cause local citizens to be killed, because that's what you're going to do.
Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Ben, would you like to respond to any of that?
So I think the discussion for the Plan Commission here is the discussion of vacating Whit Road and looking at the proposal that we presented with Pure Development in terms of improving the adjacent roads. The other alternative here is to provide a way to get around Lily's side. I think that was mentioned a couple of times. Is there a way to continue to maintain access on Whit Road through that area so we can keep the ag traffic off of the other high capacity, high speed corridors and be able to provide? It certainly won't be a direct route because obviously as Lilly talked about, the road running directly through their site has some security issues and process challenges. Is there a way that we can redirect Whit Road? So we would still be proposing closing the existing Whit Road right-of-way, but can we create a way to get through that area but around their site? So that's a question I think important to discuss, and I'll be happy to answer questions related to that. In light of some comments we heard earlier today, we have started to take a look at that a little bit. Again, don't have necessarily a 100% solution, but we do have some thoughts related to that might work. It certainly would need some additional evaluation to make sure in terms of feasibility. But there are ways to continue to provide access along the Whit Road corridor, but just relocate it around their site. One thing we have just started to look at, let me go back to, let me use this one and I'll zoom in a little bit. So one thing we have started to look at, again, we don't necessarily want Whit Road to become a high volume corridor, so we don't necessarily, the direct access, so this area is changing. Whether we close Whit Road, whether Eli Lilly comes here, this area is all zone general industrial in this area. So this area is going to be changing. Traffic volumes are going to increase regardless of whether the road is closed. But in order to, again, looking at not just the volume of traffic, but the type of traffic, is there a way that we could create access for slower moving ag traffic and other things like that without redirecting them to US 52 or State Road 39? One thing that we've started looking at, I know Kevin was looking at a little bit this afternoon also, would be to, can you see the cursor? So I'm at the south end of Lilly's site. From Whit Road, could we dedicate right away to extend a road westbound along their southern border and then look at essentially creating a frontage road along the interstate that would get you back to this 450, section of 450 right here, So again, creating a route, again, not direct, and it's a little bit longer, obviously, but it would be a road that would essentially be a local road cross-section that would get you to where you could still use Whit Road and get around their site, allow them to have the security they need on their site, but still provide that alternative access. Again, if something happens on State Road 39, there would be an additional north-south route here. Again, not a straight route, but it would allow you to get through that area and then keep them also off US 52. So again, I just wanted to bring that up for the point of discussion because I wanted to be able to address the concerns that were raised. We heard some of those comments earlier today as well. So we've started looking at that as well, in addition to the improvements that are still going to be required all these other roadways. That wouldn't change any of these other improvements. They're all still going to be required based on future traffic. But looking at maintaining a north-south access point that keeps that slower moving traffic that we know is still going to be traveling through this area. Again, not a significant volume, but even putting one tractor or one combine on one of those primary roads obviously causes issues with speed and things like that. So that's one thing I just wanted to kind of throw out there for discussion. Be happy to answer any questions about that, is this idea of rather than just closing Whit Road, improving these other roads, do we essentially relocate Whit Road, use 450 north, on this where it exists already on the north side, and then creating essentially an additional county road that extends around their site. It doesn't significantly impact their site. Certainly the improvements that they've shown with the solar and everything located along the interstate would have to scoot back probably 40 feet to make way for the road, but you would still have the landscaping and buffer yards that would just be shifted off the interstate a little bit to create room for that frontage road. So that's, again, just as we're kind of looking at this from a broader perspective, that's one thing that we've started looking at a little bit there. There is a creek crossing here. You can kind of see it a little bit in the aerial. There's a creek crossing there. There's no floodplain associated with it on the east side of the interstate, so we're not thinking that that's going to require like a significant bridge structure. Probably just, and Kevin, maybe you can address a little bit too, it's likely a culvert depending on the volume of water that would be going underneath the interstate. So it's likely just a large culvert or a series of smaller culverts depending on what makes the most sense from volume. But other than that, it's just looking at dedication of some right-of-way to get us a route around. So again, just wanted to bring that up for discussion. If you have any questions about that or we want to discuss that further, you have any other ideas, we'd be happy to discuss those as well tonight.
Yeah, I would add to Ben's comments, I would agree that needs consideration. And, we had a lot of conversation today internally and with some residents that are in the room that really make us think about these things. Obviously, from an engineering standpoint, I think there are engineering solutions, but maybe that's just one engineer's opinion that engineers can solve all the world's problems. But I would encourage the Lilly and the IEDC and Pure team to think about that option. I think it would alleviate a lot of concerns, a lot of issues that we heard in the room tonight. Obviously, we just make recommendations here, as we've talked about, and we don't have to solve that problem tonight, but if others feel that way, I think that could be a condition or a request. I wouldn't say a condition, I would say a request that we would put on our recommendation as we move it forward. Whether that recommendation is positive or negative, I don't know how the group is feeling, but I think that's worth further study. And I'm not saying to stop everything from moving forward. I think we can study that while this moves forward before we make decisions at City Council, but I agree with Ben. We'd like to see it studied further.
And I think actually, Kevin, it could be a condition of the recommendation. I mean, again, whether it's a positive or negative recommendation, it's going to get forwarded to the council, and I think you could place that condition on that recommendation to evaluate and provide a recommendation for an alternative route for Whit Road. If it's the decision that it's acceptable to close the existing right-of-way, but only conditionally on essentially relocating that to still provide access, I think you could do that as well. And then obviously we would need to figure out, at least conceptually what that solution is so that the council could consider that when they're looking at the vacation ordinance.
Hey, Ben, would that be conditioned on the right-of-way tonight or on the Eli Lilly development?
I think we were looking at that Eli Lilly or we'll have to figure out exactly, but that those improvements would be made as part of the construction. So yes, there would have to be a dedication of right-of-way for the road. And certainly we'll work with Kevin to figure out exactly what that width needs to be. But also, there would be a condition that we would probably figure out between now and when the vacation ordinance is considered by the council on a timing, and my guess is it would end up being part of Eli Lilly's construction. Another thing that we have to consider, we didn't talk about much, is how we maintain access through the site during construction, because obviously if the decision is made to vacate the road, it will cease to exist as a public road. So now we've kind of talked with Lilly a little bit, but obviously there's going to be construction. The time schedule is like 3.5 years. So they've already started thinking about, is there a way for them to provide access through their site temporarily as well? Certainly they won't be able to construct that road quickly enough to have it there when the road is vacated. So there's also discussions about the ability to allow people to get through their site in the meantime while construction is happening. So that's something that we're also in the works to figure out for the temporary condition that would happen during construction, in addition to the permanent condition we just mentioned about trying to find a way to get around their site.
How long would it take to construct a road of that length? Because I'm thinking it would probably still be gravel, because I think 450, 450 that west is already gravel, so.
Yeah, so what we'd be looking at, we would want something that meant city requirements in terms of
Right, so it would have to
pavement.
be,
So it
have
would
to
be
be paved.
and we would expect that 450 in that section would have to be improved also.
Okay. But what's the time, how long would that take?
It's essentially a glorified private drive that they would be building in their site, so it would take, Kevin, maybe you have some, so it's not a significant road project, but it would take some time.
Time-wise, I don't think it's something that you couldn't build within a construction season, say, standard April through November. I think that's a doable time period for something like that.
If we're going agricultural-wise, though, we talking 2 growing seasons?
No.
It'd be essentially 1 year during.
It could be built in one season, and then as Ben said, I think he's already had conversations with the Lilly team about how do we consider farm access while they're under construction. So maybe there is a path through the construction site for farmers during that first season.
Okay.
So that's something we would consider. Yeah, my initial thought was gravel road, but I agree. This would be a city road. If we're talking about it's within the annexation area, it would be city right-of-way. We'd want it built to a certain city standard.
It's 2023. We don't put in gravel roads. We shouldn't have gravel roads within 4 feet of our county seat, or within 4 miles of our county seat, within 2 miles of our county seat. So.
Yeah, no, that's valid. To the other question about the other roads, yeah, they are county roads. They'll still be county roads. They're working with the county to make these improvements. The county is at the table, the meetings we've had. The county highway department is always at the table, working through these traffic studies, these cross sections, these proposals. And it's not uncommon that a project within the city will have to make off-site improvements that go out into the county. And as Mr. Watts said, those are private right-of-way acquisition discussions that his team is working through at this point. So it's not something the city or the county can control. Those are private developer commitments.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but regardless of what we decide with this, the state is going to change an interchange. And it could really potentially mess up any design we decide, right?
If you would ask the state, that interchange system change is going to happen regardless of whether the Lilly project moves forward.
There's a chance it could be not ag-friendly.
We've been proposing a new interchange since, from a planning standpoint, the city and the county's thoroughfare plan since at least 2007, and to be honest, I've not looked at the plans prior to that, showed and proposed new interchange access at that location, both the city and the county, just to make sure everyone heard that. And then in 2017, we endeavored to do an interchange feasibility study at that location so that we could have a voice at the table as the federal highway makes that change. We were somewhat told thanks, but no thanks, but obviously they're reconsidering it and they're fine to change their minds. There's been a lot of new leadership at Federal Highway and State DOT. So that's where they are now, and they've made that decision that that's in the best interest of the Federal Highway system, and they're moving forward with that. I will say most of the options they're considering, we also considered, and we ended up settling on an option just north of 300 was our preferred recommended option. I'm not sure where they will land on their preferred recommended option, but.
Brian, did you ask about the design of the actual interchange, whether it would accommodate?
I'm just saying, if we, no matter what we decide with moving a right-of-way or vacating this road, they're going to come in and potentially change any entrance there with that new interchange, correct?
Say, in terms of the Lilly site, there's only one option that would theoretically impact the Lilly site. I don't know that in terms of the scoring, that's one really filtered to the top. None of the rest of them would impact what we're talking about here necessarily directly. They would all be south of the Lilly site. But again, in terms of the design of the interchange, like Kevin said earlier, all these road segments, interchanges, intersections have to be designed to accommodate ag traffic. It won't be a perfect solution. We're not going to have like 25-foot wide turn lanes, but it'll all be designed to make sure equipment can get through those intersections. So what we're really talking about here is there a way that we can keep that traffic, essentially give them a route that doesn't require them to use those higher speed, higher volume corridors. And that's when we're talking about trying to get essentially vacating Whit Road right away where it exists, but then providing an alternative that gets around Lilly site.
Okay.
Ben, can you elaborate a little bit? So I know the recommendation tonight is needed. If conditions are put on it, and how does that work? And if the city council makes a decision that includes or doesn't include our recommendation, what needs to happen at that point?
So as we mentioned, this is a recommendation. The council can choose to follow the recommendation. They could choose to do something different than the recommendation. So regardless of whether you provide a positive, negative, or no recommendation tonight, or you place conditions on that, the council will consider that as part of their process. So they could say, yes, we agree with the Plan Commission. This is the outcome we want to see as part of this. Or they could say, you know what, here we want to do something different. Here's what we think should be the outcome. So again, if you would decide just to provide a positive recommendation with no consideration of a route around, the council could still look at this and say, no, we need to see a route around. So again, this is a recommendation. The council considers the Plan Commission's recommendation as part of their process. They can choose to follow that recommendation, or if they decide as the legislative body to do some alternative other than the recommendation, they could also do that. But certainly they do consider those recommendations and any conditions placed on those as part of the process. I will certainly, whatever the recommendation is, make sure to highlight that recommendation. And if there are conditions placed on it, we'll be working feverishly with Pure Development and Eli Lilly and the IEDC to figure out what that solution, what makes most sense, so that we can present that at least in conceptual form to the council, if that's the decision that the Plan Commission makes.
Okay, any more questions for Ben? Kent or Michael, or you guys want to respond?
Appreciate your consideration, and this is the first time this evening we've heard of this. I came to this meeting and was told before the meeting started that this was at least being floated as a possibility. The IEDC and Eli Lilly and Company fully intend to be good neighbors, and we're more than happy to look at it. I don't know what the outcome of that will be. We'll take your direction. We'll look at the options. There are other options for moving traffic from A to B in that area. So this may be a possibility. There may be better possibilities. So I guess what we'd like to do is have the opportunity to, before we tell Lilly they got to forfeit some of this land they're intending to buy for a road, we'd like to at least get their input. We'd like to get the IEDC's input. Who's going to pay for it? What kind of road is it going to be? Where is it going to go? What other options might be available? So, a lot on your plate, I understand. I also want to make it clear, the record reflects the traffic counts, and it's part of your file. We didn't talk about it tonight in detail, but it is part of the record. And the number 40 vehicles per hour in the peak periods is the amount of traffic on Whit Road. I just want to make reference to it. It's not a heavily trafficked road. To listen to the folks here, I don't deny it's an important road to some people. I don't deny that. We've got to manage this. We've got competing interests. We've got a project that the city would like to attract. There's tremendous benefits from this opportunity. We want to make it safe, so we're willing to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. Any other comment from the commission? Okay, I would entertain a recommendation that we will forward to the council.
I would like to make a recommendation on docket number 23-02 for a favorable recommendation to the city council with the following conditions. The condition that an alternative route to Whit Road is considered and required as part of the vacation.
I'd second.
Okay, Kelly, got a motion and a second?
Okay. Dan Bayshore?
Yes.
Kevin Krulik?
Yes.
Corey Kuntz?
Yes.
Keith Campbell?
Yes.
Ryan Tandy?
Yes.
Heather Schaller?
Yes.
Eileen Mullen?
Yes.
Lori Gross?
Yes.
Okay. I don't see any further business. Any further business from the commission? See none. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. This meeting is closed. Next planning commission will be Tuesday, February the 21st. See you then.